sometimes I'll attach pictures and it'll bounce back from a megabyte limit attachment, and I won't see it right away because it'll go to my junk mail for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, but it usually shows up on like unsent mail, they give you some kind of notification.
Okay, if you want to start with that part, I can.
Just hit record on this?
Yes, it should, yeah. And then you want to give Teresa just the
So
heads
we're
up.
ready? I think she will. Teresa, we're ready.
Yep. Should be working it. Good. Have fun, Mike.
So I'll call to order the Bolton Conservation Commission, meeting January 7th, 2014, and I'll take a roll call. Robert Cohen.
Janet Pesatoro.
Brian Barabee.
Maria Berman.
Maxwell Pino.
Carol Gilbert.
Okay, and the first notice of business is Pace 401 Berlin Road, continuation of public hearing notice of intent. This hearing was continued from December 3rd, 2013, and I see that the applicant and his agent are already sitting at the table. And I guess you want to give us an update?
Well, as from the last meeting, we had walked the site. In the meantime, we had received the approval from the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, allowing the work to take place. What they want to see is they want to see the grass planted, seed mixture that we had submitted,
Yep.
which should work there, no problem. They approved the plan as presented. The only thing we're going to change is the shrubs I had originally put in my proposal. They don't see it as making a difference either way. They're more interested in having the grass established. Apparently what's out there is a Blanding's turtle, and they're more interested in getting, allowing it to have some renewed migratory habitat.
Yep.
They also, even though I didn't see it in their letter, but in speaking with the analyst at the Endangered Species Program that they're working on the file, he wants to see the project done before the spring. The reason being is he wants us to get it bloomed and seeded as soon as possible. He doesn't want the soil exposed for such a period that it may cause turtles to lay eggs right in the middle of the field. That was what he expressed to me.
Okay. And now you can't seed it until what, April, is it?
Well, we can't put the seed mix down until things
April,
melt.
Yeah.
But, we need to get the material out by like the end of March.
And how deep, the one question I had was how deep are you going to go into the pond to move all the materials in the pond? There was a lot of,
Well, you're not gonna do
Junk
much
in the
now
pond.
because it's all iced.
Well, anything that would have to be taken out of the pond would be done essentially at the shoreline, or whatever we could see at the shoreline. It would be done, as we've stated on site, by an excavator with a clock. Everything would reach over and pick, so there would be no disturbance or intrusion into the wetland itself. Everything that, once the seed is planted, everything will be allowed to naturally germinate and regrow once all that material is out of there. Nothing has been found subsurface to date. We don't expect to find everything. As you could see by what was on site, it looked like everything was just basically tossed.
anybody in the commission have any questions?
Well, I just want to say that when we did the site visit, I kind of had the sense that it was not just accumulated farm dump. There looked like much more, as if the place had been, a dump where stuff had been delivered. Because I've seen farm dumps before, and when it's accumulated over a long period of time like that, vegetation starts to grow over it. And there was a lot of very exposed stuff, huge quantities. I mean, and
You have no idea what huge quantities are.
Yeah.
There was a lot
even
more
more.
stuff.
I know.
Well, like the
even
majority
more.
of the tires that
Right.
were removed off the site were
Right.
essentially farm tractor tires,
Yeah.
which had been basically piled up. They used the tractors to
Yeah,
change the
over
tires.
the years though, with
Over-
like a farm family, that's what it,
Yeah,
I don't know,
Janet.
it didn't seem like, a farm would generate that much waste. I'm thinking it had been trucked in. And I guess that leaves me to wonder, about the whole, hazardous waste issue, which was hard to evaluate because it's not during growing season, so we couldn't see if there was an effect on the vegetation. And Carol had mentioned some drums that she had seen on the other side of the road.
Yeah, when we walked the delineation on the other side of the road, there have been some drums, barrels that have been down there.
Yeah, those barrels and drums basically looked like, to me, they were from farm chemicals. They're very old drums, they were open, and anything that was in there was evaporated. They were empty.
So I guess, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is that there's a question still, you're saying you don't think there's anything buried, and then there's a question as to whether there's been more material brought in and stuff has been covered over, maybe even if there is more. I don't know, did you do any excavation
We
from
didn't need
other
to,
parts?
because once we got down to the bottom of the piles, it was just dirt. Okay, so there wasn't anything buried. So, picture this, whether it was brought in, pushed up, whatever it was, okay, was put into piles.
Yeah.
Okay, and when that pile got full, they went to another pile, I think you saw that. There was a lot of stuff that had blocks in it and stuff like it, looked like some building material, okay? Certainly not enough for a house or something like that, but it you know, nobody's gonna remember what happened, you know, 100 or 50 years ago.
I mean, when you look at the topo that's on the topo maps and the topo that's on site now that we
That's
did,
consistent.
it's pretty much identical, which is
Right.
suggestive that whatever was done there was just dumped
Right.
on the ground.
I guess I'm just wondering, does there need to be any sort of testing of the water or soil or anything to know if there had been anything toxic? Because we don't know what, I mean, I don't know, I'm just raising.
Well, I mean, anything that would have been volatile would have been gone out of the water by now, just based on action of the sun. Volatile organic chemicals don't last.
I don't know if I
in water.
agree
We
with
don't
that.
know what,
'Cause
we don't know what it was.
I'm not saying that there's anything underneath, but if the stuff that got into the ground, it could still be there, not on the top. So,
Without question, if somebody dropped a gas can there, okay?
Well, or even metals can leach into the ground. and
There's not a lot of
material.
metal there, okay? There's just not a lot of metal there.
I think she means metals in chemicals, is that?
No.
Well, no, I meant, I was thinking metals, but again, I didn't see the whole site, so I don't know what was in the debris that was there, you know, whether there were, you know, like, could be anything that was dumped that was, you know, people, if things were trucked in, I mean, anything could have been brought in, you know, and so,
Exactly, that's what I-
who knows?
I kind of felt that most of the stuff was on the surface from the way it looked. And I've seen old farms, they just dump stuff, they don't bury it. They
Right.
just dump it and dump it
Yeah,
and dump it.
I actually wasn't concerned about buried, I was concerned that it looked like it had been trucked in because it was so much more than what a farm family would have accumulated over the years. Especially where you'd already removed so much, it was more,
I can't
even
attest to
more.
that, okay? I can't, well, I will tell you, okay, the stuff in the front was a lot more earthy and stuff like that. It had started growing over and things like that.
A lot of the stuff out in the back was basically debris from old structures.
Right.
A lot of it was,
Right.
you know, wood and metal from framing.
There was some cinder
tires,
blocks,
some cinder blocks.
bricks.
I guess the question is from the wetland standpoint, does there need to be, I know nothing about water testing, or just because this place was a dump, does there need to be water testing? What do people?
Well, respectfully, I'd say it wasn't a dump, it was a dumping place, okay? I think that's a big difference.
Is that like assistant manager or assistant to the manager?
Yeah, pretty much, pretty
What?
much.
Well, I mean, the other thing you
No.
might want to keep in mind is that the endangered species program didn't cite that as a concern to them.
But they didn't do a site visit and see what was there.
If you looked at their aerial photo that they had, you could see everything that was there.
I
The
don't
aerial
know
photo
that
was
that's
shocking.
their bailiwick as
Yeah,
much
we're not
either.
doing
I think from the wetland standpoint, one thing that we've done in the past is we have had somebody do, you know, have some oversight. We've had oversight by a licensed site professional, and give us a report, you know, so that it's been, somebody certified that there's nothing that's been contaminated. Now, what was the Board of Health requiring? I thought there was something along that line that they were,
We were just giving you the dump slips.
which told us really nothing, that they, only that
Well-
they went to a recycling facility. But I thought,
Yeah, but-
I thought when
yeah,
you
but nobody-
first started talking to the Board of Health, that they wanted some kind of oversight, or somebody was gonna
No.
check it.
All they asked for was the dump slips, to my
Yeah,
knowledge.
and,
But the dump slips just give weight, right?
well, the dump slips they give weight, but at the same time, okay, you can't just bring hazardous waste someplace, they tested, they would shut down the dump.
And it
So-
al- it
so
also
they're-
certifies
so
that it was
right.
disposed of properly,
Right.
which I did
Right.
receive a call from the solid waste division at
No, you know what
DEP when
I'm
this issue
saying?
first came up.
Mhm.
I did send them a copy of the dump slips, and they seemed satisfied.
No, right, okay, that's.
I mean,
all.
what I can do, I mean, I gotta get going, but what I can do is, I'm gonna be monitoring the site for the growing anyway, and for the removal, and if anything is discovered under the ground, I have LSPs that I can call right in, licensed site professionals. I can call them right in.
That's the that's what we, that's who you would have oversee something that you wanted to have a report on, if you wanted to confirm that there was, you know, if you were doing like a preliminary site assessment to determine whether there was any contamination, you would have that done by a licensed site professional.
If there was a licensed site protector there while they were working on it,
Right.
when they first started, that way we wouldn't slow them up, but if they found something, they would stop it. Would that be something you'd be willing to consider?
I'd rather not do that, and not full disclosure, it's just a very big expense. I know what they cost. It's, you know, it's probably $1,000 a day to have somebody stand there
I
and
mean,
watch you load
I'm gonna
trucks.
be on site anyway. If I spot something that's dug up under the ground, I can call the LSPN.
What's your legal responsibility? Is there a legal responsibility?
The second something is brought out, it's required to notify DEP, you guys, and an LSP immediately.
Respectfully,
Well,
okay,
it's-
the second we knew we had even the small infraction we had, we came right in, jumped on the sword, said we did something
Yeah,
wrong.
no,
We're not looking to,
I appreciate that.
okay, we're not looking to camouflage
Right,
something.
right,
We're looking
I'm
to
just
clean.
saying
So,
what I
can you
saw.
just go back to the drums then, like with the drums, when, if you came across the drums, you know, you're saying, well, you think everything's, it maybe, there's nothing in them, but they weren't tested, we don't really know, so we don't know whether anything's leached out underneath them. So say you find other drums, is that when you would call in a licensed site professional?
If I find another drum and it had an oil, like an oil label on it, or a toxic chemical label, and
Or
I
farm
found that,
pesticide, or?
that it was, you know, buried underground, I definitely would have to talk to my client about that at that point.
If.
Yeah, but, okay, so then
if
you're not
you
saying
recall-
you're gonna call in a licensed site
Would
professional
you have to
or
talk to
notify
us about
DEP
that?
or
I would have
us?
to talk to you guys about that
Yeah.
automatically.
Okay, and DEP?
And DEP.
So what about
You
the
have
drums
to
on the other
remember what was
side?
there.
Did you
The drums on the other
contact
side,
them?
the drums on the other side are on the surface and they're empty.
Are they still,
There's not enough of them that, you know, there's nothing on the ground that could be considered reportable.
are they still there?
Yeah, they're still there.
Remember, there was this is how, if you recall, there was that old oil can there. There was a gasoline can. You know, I mean, go ahead.
He has a, yeah, he's a call.
He has a personal call he has to go on, so he's leaving me alone to fight all you.
Well, probably come up.
I heard
And
you
then,
say-
are you here for this one too? I can't remember.
I'm just driving.
Oh, you're the driver?
That's what everybody calls him. the
I heard
driver.
you say if you take us all on by yourself, we're still outnumbered. Is that true? Did I hear you say that in the hallway?
Pretty much.
That's-
No, I think that we've shown that we've been acting professional. We're
Yeah.
gonna continue to act professional. You know, I mean.
I
we're-
think Janice has brought up a legitimate
Right.
item, but I don't want to slow you down. So maybe there's something where we could have someone from the commission there, when you start to dig, just to
You're very
take a look.
welcome.
That you will notify us, give us, you know, X amount of time, like 48 hours notice before you go in there.
Yeah,
And
we
then
did
we
that
could
the
have-
last time.
We could have someone there, and then as you
Yeah.
start the stuff, if we feel at that point that we need to stop, you agree to stop.
Yep.
And then that way Janice will feel satisfied, and the rest of the commission will feel satisfied.
Yes, we're actually contemplating screening that, okay, just to take some of the weight out of that. I mean, you know, I mean, there's a lot more dirt in that than you think there is.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just, that's,
Where do you think you're gonna stockpile it? Have you located a spot?
when a stockpile, we're gonna load it right up.
Oh, I thought you were gonna, so you're gonna
No.
screen it offsite?
No. If we screened it, we would come up to the main area there that was the flat area where we've already cleaned up, okay, and do it right there.
Outside the 100-foot buffer zone?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay, well, so
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah,
my
yeah,
question was,
yeah, no,
where would
yeah,
you
yeah.
stockpile or screen
The
the
original,
drill and stockpile it?
the original place there. Oh, okay, and I'm not sure we're going to do that. I mean, if they can pick it up and cone it, I don't know what that means. But they, you know,
Well, I guess, I mean, so that's what we're trying to get at is some of the process, and I wasn't on the site visit, so I don't know if you talked about it, but if you're, so it sounds like, I know one of the times that you were in the office, anyway, you had been talking to different contractors, so I'm not sure if you know what the contractor, how they're gonna do it. Matt's mentioned using the excavator, you're talking about
With a claw.
coning it, or,
Yeah.
you know.
With a thumb, they call
Yeah,
it.
so, I mean, part of our concern is this, what, you know, you're gonna have all this soil that's not stabilized, and some of it's gonna be directly adjacent to the wetlands, so I think what I need to understand is how much of that area, like, if you did this, when you came in before, the last time we had the meeting was December 3rd, I think, right?
Mhm.
So you had wanted to get started right away. Now we've sort of seen what the winter conditions are like. We've had snow, rain, 40 degrees, freezing, can't do anything. So if you were to start when the ground was frozen, and then we were to get the thaw, like this weekend, and get another thaw and rain, you know, I guess my concern is like, what are the precautions that you're gonna take?
Silt fence and hay bales,
And what
Straw.
else if we needed something, well, yeah.
straw.
Straw bales, but, I mean, if it was, you have like you had a hay bale or a silt fence line, a gradient, so you had multiple
Right, yeah,
lines.
right.
You know, so are you starting at the wetland side, are you starting at the buffer zone, outside of the,
My-
how are you working the site?
I honestly would leave that up to the contractor, okay? You know, I'm not gonna tell you I'm gonna start here or there. There were multiple piles, okay, they were contained, okay? You know, whether he starts in one area or another, I don't know, okay? If they have a plan how to do it, I can tell them what to do and I'll leave.
Okay, well, I think usually we require some kind of plan to be
Well, I can do
submitted.
that.
So when you hire your contractor, I think that's something that we would want to have submitted, exactly how they're gonna go about the work and what measures they're gonna take to minimize the alteration. You know, so if they're gonna focus on a certain area to start, you know, then they get that area stabilized, and whether, I mean, the only other additional thing is, you know, potentially they might need to use some erosion blankets if we had, you know, some bad weather and things were needed more than just hay, straw and.
We probably have a couple of days worth of work there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, this
But you're gonna have a very
long
disturbed
term.
area. How much square footage is the disturbed area?
Yeah, it's not as much as you think. It's like we talked about, well, you weren't out there respectfully, and there were piles. So they're gonna go from a pile and come out of that area, go to the next pile.
But a lot of it's already been taken out and been disturbed,
Right.
so that what's left is not as great, but it's closer to the pond. A lot of the stuff.
Well, if
He's
we look
saying
at the
how
plan,
many
can we
square
just look
feet.
at
I
the
don't know
plan
how
and be
many
on the
square
same
feet it
page
is.
then here?
Yeah. Yeah, we located everything.
So when I look at this is the area that was intruded into without the review. And this is the area that's required within our, yeah, that's gonna be required. And if I look at pile, I mean, I look at this and think, it looks pretty much like all of that's gonna be disturbed.
Well, it's really not, because there's a pile, and you're gonna take that pile out of there.
But
and
this
you're
was
gonna put the next-
all removed. This is all, it's not gonna be like this? You're not gonna do it the same way this was done?
There are no trees there. It was a field, if you remember. It's just overgrown field. So we're going to go and take the debris pile out.
But my question, I mean, this is all completely unvegetated now. It's completely regraded, no vegetation.
Because there was a big pile right in here.
Oh,
Okay,
so
right.
we
There was
didn't
no
see
woody
that.
material, no woody growth in there, it was just.
No,
And a
this was a big pile of stuff, okay?
One thing.
So, one of the things that they did do, okay, is they backbladed all that. I won't have them backblade this, okay? We'll basically take that out of there, hand
What is
pick it.
backblading? Is that-
Backblades when they take the bulldozer, okay? and
Push it back and
Right,
smooth it
right.
out.
So, when it's a little area like that, there's no need for that.
Okay.
Okay, you see there's a pile of debris here, a pile of debris here. And these are the piles of debris that we're getting rid of. I mean, this is what, a 40 scale? You got about 100 feet here, maybe 120 feet here worth of piles of debris. So, and then there's a couple piles in here. I mean, everybody that was out there knows, okay, these aren't massive piles. They're, 4 or 5 feet high. And, okay, some are less than that. Okay, some are a little more spread out than others. What, all we want to do is we're going to put silt fence up here, we're going to put a straw bale
berm here, and basically we're going to, okay, clean up the area right here.
And you're just gonna reach over with the claw to take stuff out of the water?
Yeah, okay, and swing around.
How much of that that's in the pond can you get? How much is-
I don't know that answer, okay, because I don't know how much of it's frozen, I don't know what the condition's gonna be that day, but whatever it is, we may have to go back in the spring and just touch it up.
Well, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
about the reach.
Well, the
Whether you can
typical
reach
reach would be
bottom.
30 feet. Okay, I mean, it's not a little machine, it's a big machine. Okay, in order to have that thumb on it, it's gotta be a big machine.
You mean you can go 30 feet out?
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I think that everybody would agree when we went out here. I mean, this sounds like a massive undertaking. What was there, okay, we stabilized. I sent you pictures if you got them. I don't know why they didn't
Oh,
go
well, I haven't
yesterday.
opened my email
Yeah.
since we.
You know, okay, we reset the silt fence. I wanted you to see that, okay? You know, okay, it's still snow covered, so there's no erosion at all.
So what are your procedures if you're gonna start, are you thinking you're gonna start in the snow then?
Well, I think that unless it all melts and it doesn't snow anymore.
So you're gonna be able to get the erosion controlled on the ground?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you had been worried about that at the last meeting.
Well, I'm always worried about it. It's just difficult. I mean, okay, it's easier to do. That's why I wanted to do it when it wasn't frozen.
They have metal pins you can drive down, and then you put the stakes in properly.
You talking about for the slip fence?
Are you
I've always seen it
satisfied,
just on
James, with my
the,
I
suggestion?
think so,
Wouldn't-
yeah.
That they give us at least 48 hours
Your slip fence, I've
notice?
only seen it on.
So we can get,
You'd make a
someone
hole.
can make
We
it?
just did it, we had stakes
Yeah.
going around by.
Come by at
you know,
lunch,
about
whatever,
us,
you know?
We wanna come by
Oh, so
when
you're
you
just making a
start.
hole
Yeah.
with the.
Yeah.
We wanna
to
be
get
there when you
into it.
That's
start,
fine.
not at lunch.
Well, no, what I'm saying is come by whenever you want.
Okay.
Please.
So, we can put that in the order that they give us 48 hours notice, so we can...
Well, I don't have an order prepared. We
Okay.
didn't meet the last time. I hadn't heard anything from anybody about, you know, what you wanted to do at this point. So, you know, we need to, that's what I'm trying to get everybody's, the input from the meeting that you had in the
Right,
field
okay.
and the input from any further discussion tonight so that I can draft an order for the next
And
meeting.
we also welcomed the Board of Health the last time, come in anytime, just as we did now.
Yep.
I just want notice, so we can
Absolutely.
show up.
You know, if we feel it's gonna be 50 degrees out on Friday, and God forgiven, maybe tomorrow it's 40 degrees and we see the thaw, and, you know, we don't know when we're gonna start, but we would give you 48 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I mean, we haven't called anybody. We don't even have, okay, anybody lined up, so we have plenty of time to notify. It's not like
Okay.
But
you're
we
gonna
should-
say, it's not like you're gonna say go and we're gonna just start. Okay, that's not the case.
We trenched out there yesterday, and there was probably about 2.5 to 3 inches of snow cover.
Yeah, it's all there is.
It's all there is.
There's not that much, amazing how much of the snow melted.
And I would like, before the work gets done, also to see the silt fence and the straw wattles and bales.
Oh, yeah, of
Make
course.
sure they're in proper.
Yeah.
Because you were very concerned at the last two meetings that it wouldn't be able to put them in.
Well,
And now you're saying it's just more difficult.
no,
so
no, it's not
I
you
think we'd
couldn't
like to
put it.
check before anything gets done.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, well, it's not you can't put it in, it's just more difficult when it's frozen.
Okay.
So we'll go and put the silt fence up and we'll,
Immediately.
So once the
Well,
silt
leave it.
fence is in, you know, we'd want to look
Yeah.
at them. But you have to have the order before they do the silt fence, right?
Well, that's how we typically require things. And so
Yeah.
the last time, after we'd met, there hadn't been any conclusion as to whether the commission would allow them to put the silt fence in advance. And we were also waiting at that point to hear from Heritage Program whether they were gonna want like any special, you know, method for the erosion control.
Yeah.
Heritage didn't have a preference for that. They didn't feel if the work was going to be done now that there'd be activity because
Yeah.
you know the species was is hibernating. So they it can just be one long or multiple long fences if we need that. So that's a standard condition that we would have in our order anyway, and having the check. But I think some of the things that sounds like we're talking about that we want is we want something to be submitted by the contractor that tells us, you know, how they're going to do the work, what their approach is going to be, whether they're going to be doing screening, where they're going to be stockpiling, right?
Mhm.
That's part of the planning
Yeah.
that we're still going to be
Well,
asking for. So in the meantime, you know, if we continue the hearing to the next meeting, start to work on an order, and that's one of the things you're going to be asking for, they can start working on getting that information.
well, again, not to further delay this, okay? I guess I give a little pushback on this. We had a sidewalk. We're gonna have some thawing this weekend, okay? I'd love to put the silt fence up there. I'd love to have you guys come out here. Okay,
I'm not against you, just the silt fence,
Yeah.
because I think since you already disturbed the area.
Right.
With the silt fence and the draw wattles or
Yeah.
bales.
I think you
will
want, I
protect
think
it
you want
more.
the straw bales there, because I think just the time of year, if you did have material that washed, the wattles aren't that high. I think I'd
Okay.
prefer to have the.
So I
straw
think,
bales.
I think we're better off having the silt fence and the bales there before the order, because that's, it's gonna still take a little time, because the area's already disturbed, and if there is a thaw or a heavy rain, stuff will wash into the pond.
Carol, are you talking about the rolls of hay that are this, the
That's
smaller?
the wattle.
Yeah, the
okay.
wattle.
So I'm saying not that on this
No.
side.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
one regular hay
The
bale.
taller bale, I think,
Okay.
is needed.
straw bales. Thank you. Okay, we'll
Okay,
learn-
so what you're saying is that you think you're in agreement to- because the area has been disturbed, you'd like to see them get the erosion control done
Yes.
sooner than later.
Correct.
So to have that part happen immediately. So that the rest of the length where they're going to be doing the further work.
So,
Yeah.
so let me request then to go a little further. I think if you're in agreement with that, I don't know why an order can't be written with this proviso to say that we'll give you a detail on how we're going to address this, whether we're gonna screen it, stock it, or haul it out.
Well, did you read the order that we gave you for Fry Road?
No.
Okay, it's like 56 conditions.
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't read it. No.
Okay, well, but that's how the
Yeah.
order is usually
Yeah.
written, so it's not prepared yet.
Okay.
So I can't, you're not, typically the way the permit process has worked for the commission is that at the meeting, we get all the information, and then after everyone feels like they're comfortable, there's no other questions that we can think of, then we'll go and draft the order of conditions, and at the next meeting, then they can vote on it.
When is
Because
the next one?
The 21st. And in part because sometimes when we're drafting it, there are things that come up. And so if we leave it open and that way, if we're like, oh, we never asked them about this, you know, then we
Plus,
can.
where you're gonna stockpile things, or how you're gonna handle, becomes part of the order. So,
Right.
so you have to provide that to us ahead of time.
What I'm trying to explain to you is there may be a combination, okay, and I don't know that answer. Okay, maybe there may be some more solid stuff that's gonna come right out and then we're not gonna screen it. Okay, the idea of screening it is when there was no snow on the ground. I don't know if that even makes sense anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can let you know that. What I'm trying to do is get this thing done, okay, within the next 30 days. So this is done and over. Okay, when we have a thaw, all we're gonna do is put some seed down there and it's gonna grow. And
Well, the seed's not gonna grow this time, it's dormant.
I'm saying in the springtime, I want it to be done. I don't want to be doing it in the spring, sinking into mud and so on and so forth. Okay, you either do it in the fall or you do it in the winter. It's the best time to do it. Okay, short of that.
So I'm willing to let you
line
put
it.
the fence and the bales in,
Yeah.
and then you get us how you're gonna handle the work there, so we can put it in the order, and that's what I'd be willing to let you do tonight, is to put the fence and the bales.
Could I suggest that we get you how we're going to handle this, and we have an order ready to go, so that we're not delayed another meeting?
But at the next meeting, I think we discussed most of the orders. The only thing that could change is when you give us how you're gonna handle it, that might raise more questions.
What would you prefer?
I
Well,
don't.
I think you're talking cross purposes. There's two options. One is that we can just put it in our order that says, you need to give us a plan that's gonna be approved afterwards, which is then not giving you any extra time. Or you can get the material to us before we have it, within a reasonable time, within the next couple of days, right? If you've got a contractor picked out, get it to us so we can include it in the order for discussion at the next meeting.
Okay, so
So
Right,
we'd wanna
that's what you're
review
saying.
it before work began, that's the only thing.
Yeah, and then that's after the order's issued. After the order's issued, there's still a 10-day appeal period.
No, I realize that, but it's the
You may have to
likelihood of
extend it
somebody
30 days, is
appealing.
what I'm saying.
The likelihood of somebody appealing this
We got
is
14
slim
days
enough.
from today, another 10.
No, from the 21st.
10 days from that is the
Right.
Well,
31st.
we'd issue it probably the next day or soon after. It wouldn't be that day.
Within the 30 days,
They'd be
we could
voting on it
probably-
that night.
Okay.
But if you don't have a work plan, we would put in the order that the
It needs to be
the
submitted.
condition is it has to be submitted and has to be, and the commission has to have a chance to look at it before work begins.
But that's why I'm asking you, I mean, if there's going, and I think it's a fair question, okay? Then if that's the case, would you rather us screen it, or would you rather us haul it up?
Oh, that was your question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
didn't get-
I don't
That's
know.
Well, and again, I'm not trying to,
Well, let me
Mince
ask
words
you,
with
go
you.
back, and
Yeah.
maybe you don't know the answer. So if you haul it out, do you need to bring in other material to
No.
stabilize it? So you're not taking out so much loam that you're gonna be able to stabilize it?
no, you're not even gonna touch the loam, you're gonna go right down to the top of it, the same way we did the other. We haven't hauled in one piece of material.
Okay, because just that would add a different kind of condition that we would, you know, be
Yeah,
concerned
no.
about, where the material comes from. that
No,
we bring
the
in.
answer is no, we would not do that.
Okay.
So you think you can pick the pile up
Right.
essentially
Yeah.
off the ground
Yeah.
and leave the ground?
Right, okay, exactly,
Right,
okay?
and can I just ask, and in the pond, you're not gonna be taking out any of the subsoil with
No,
that?
absolutely not.
No dredging? is it?
Absolutely no, there'll be no dredging, okay?
Okay.
You know, if there was pick something, I don't know, the lady said there was a washing machine in there, I don't know if that's true or not. We walked out there, I didn't see it, I don't know if anybody else saw it. But let's just assume there was, they'd pick it up, and that would be the end of that. Nobody's gonna go down and, okay, selfishly, because we're not trying to make more work for ourselves. So, you know, the minimal but effective, okay, cleanup.
I guess the only difference I can see from what your question is, if you were to screen the material, then you really wouldn't be seeding it with the screen material on it without backblading or regrading it or whatever, and that
No.
could make it difficult, no?
No,
This
because-
time of year?
No, because we just used, we would stockpile that material, okay, and use it later.
But not
Okay,
in
we
this
ju-
area?
Right.
You'd use it somewhere else
Right.
on the site?
Right. Okay, I mean, there's plenty of places to lose that material
Yeah, I
Out-
don't know why we would care if it's far enough
outside of
away.
your jurisdiction.
I mean, what you should do, you know, is just, you should probably put something around that, just
Oh,
because
yeah,
of the
yeah,
time of
no, right,
year.
right.
And maybe even stabilize it as soon as you can with, if you're not gonna use it for a while,
Right.
you know, if the lots aren't gonna be done.
That's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
We would, you know, when we're all done with it, we put a silt fence around it and, okay, and just leave it there, okay, and worry about it later. You know, it appears to me, okay, I'm just looking at this, you know, I mean, there seems to be a big concern over screening this. Why don't we just haul it up, okay, and that'll be the end of that.
I don't have a big concern. I
think
think
it's
we're just
easier.
trying to get the details.
I think it's a lot easier this time of year to do that.
Just tell us what you're gonna do and send
Okay.
a plan, that's what we're asking for. And then if we find anything of concern, we'll bring it up.
Yeah.
So timeframes, you'd like us to submit something like by the end of the week so you guys could have a chance to?
Yeah, because then I can send it out to them for the weekend, they could have a chance to.
And that way, by the time we roll around another 10 days, 7 days from whenever you guys see it, we can come back here and hopefully get going 10 or 11 days after that.
Well, after the appeal period.
Correct.
Okay, so you want to continue it?
Yeah, so we'll continue the hearing till 7 PM, January 21st.
And we're first on the agenda?
Can we
We're
defer
first on the agenda?
It is.
So 7 is
That's
first.
Okay.
We'll make it 6:30 for you. Is that
Yeah,
right?
sounds-
We appreciate it.
We're not coming till
We're not
7.
coming.
You're on at 6:30.
Appreciate it.
I think we once came early. We must have had a very busy schedule. We came at 6:30.
Yeah, there's been, it's been times.
Yeah.
Free food?
Okay, good.
Did you get those pictures? I don't know why they
No,
didn't.
I'm not receiving anything here.
Oh, okay.
I'm not being hooked up.
You don't-
Okay.
Do we have to sign it?
Yes, I have a
We
form
have
for
to
you to
sign.
sign.
You feel comfortable to give us 48 hours notice? Some one of us can get down there just to take a look.
Where you going?
You want to sign it?
Yeah, there's a form, I just need to sign it.
If you're down there, they might find Jimmy Hoffa. Might be exciting.
He wasn't in Bolton.
How you know?
I know.
Oh. Mother will approve you right now.
It wasn't in Detroit either.
He'll always be the cornerstone in one of these buildings.
So as long as they give us notice Tuesday or later, then I can,
So you want us to physically draft it on the plan, where we're gonna put something, and spell it out for you?
No, on the plan.
It's a nice little picnic.
Wednesday's my last.
Put the section along
Oh,
with the
really?
front of the things where we're
Why
gonna
were
put
you
it.
going?
Congratulations.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about more.
Well, we want,
Narrative.
well, we want that
Oh,
too.
really?
We also want a
Oh,
narrative
you're
of what you're gonna
retired.
do. With the
Congratulations.
material and where you're gonna stockpile it and how you're gonna stabilize it.
I have too much stuff to do,
I have too much stuff to do, I have to retire.
Good, did you hear that? They just wanna make sure.
Too much extra costs first.
What? No, what?
Too much everything. We wanna do it right
Well,
once
not
and
really
complete, so, you know, will you give us
It's too
a
busy to go to work.
layout of what you want us to do?
No, you give
No.
us the layout.
Alright. I wanna make sure we stockpile everything, stabilize everything,
Yes.
and I don't want to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See you in a couple
Thank you.
weeks.
Thank you.
I'll see you before then.
That's mine. Okay, next order is Century Mill Estates, Spectacle Hill Road, to discuss the request of the Century Mill Estates to commence construction of Phase 4 of the subdivision outside the approved time period. So,
Good evening, everyone.
we should get told we do have conservation, and we'll come back on. I thought they were coming for us.
Okay, just to start out, we, at our last meeting, it was determined that we had to go to planning board in order to get their approval to move forward with the next phase of the project, Phase 4. We did do that, we went to planning board, and they did give us the approval from their perspective to move forward. At the last meeting with you,
Why don't you everybody introduce themselves before we get started?
Oh, I'm
So we
sorry.
can have it in the records being recorded.
Brandon Ducharme, Andy Benditson, Alan Shockett.
Just one quick point,
Yes, sir.
because last time Andy was here, we asked him to leave, and my understanding was that he was not allowed back at the meeting. Is that- is
That's been
something
changed so
changed?
long as council's here.
Okay,
Yeah, we've
Their
worked with
counsel.
Tom.
didn't know that.
Okay, so as I say, the planning board did give us the approval to move forward with the next phase. We had submitted at the last Concom meeting a narrative discussing moving forward with Phase 4 and doing to build the crossing, thank you. That's been augmented with some other plans that have been drafted and submitted to Carol. Brandon, if you could walk through what's been submitted. So that we can explain what we're trying to do.
So it's been a little while since we last met, so to kind of recap, there's an existing order of conditions already in place for the work. And in those conditions, there was one condition that stated when this wetland crossing could be done. And that was obviously in, I think it was June,
July.
July. And the reason for that condition is so that it's done during a dry time of the year. And at this point, you know, knowing where we are with groundwater levels, we're before you asking to basically move forward with the wetland crossing now, based on the fact that it is a dry period of time. And when we went through that, one of the things that came up was there were still other things that we had to pull together prior to getting your approval on that. One of them was preparing a construction sequence, which we have done. We had submitted a copy prior to the last meeting, which we did receive some comments from Carol, and we've had a chance to kind of go through those and revise what we initially submitted, even though it hadn't been discussed at a meeting. One of the other things was we prepared shop drawings or engineered plans for both the retaining wall that's required along the edge of the road, and there's a arch culvert or structure that's basically going to go over the wetland, and that has footings. And we've prepared engineered stamped drawings for both of those items.
Is that precast, culvert?
No, it's gonna be a pour-in-place footing, and the culvert itself is precast, yeah. So, and I think one of Carol's comments was as far as review, and talking with Andy, you know, he's certainly open to having that reviewed by the town's engineer if they want to take a look at those prior to.
Yeah, so I received, I think I sent them out to you yesterday.
Got them
I
late
think.
yesterday.
Yeah, and Alan may have sent them to me on Friday, I can't remember if I got them before I left or not, but, Brandon had sent them over too, so I shot those out to you guys, but I hadn't even looked at them at that point. And then I tried to communicate with Brandon a little bit, so we ended up talking. I thought when Houghton Farm was done, the subdivision was done, the shop drawings had been reviewed by the town engineer, Fred Hamway, for the planning board, and it really hadn't come through me as much at that point. And I wasn't sure if it was part of their decision or not, but where it is part of the road crossing, typically I would think that Fred would be the one to take a look at that, just because again, we required it in part because the plans said that they weren't stamped, you know, and it would need to be done by a structural engineer.
Yeah.
Not that we saw a deficiency one way or another, so I don't think that's what we were looking at that
We
point.
wouldn't
We
know
were
if there
just,
was a deficiency.
well, we're not, none of us are engineers, so I mean, I think that was the point of it, so I think it would be appropriate to have an engineer, and if, I didn't hear back from Erica today, I think the
Okay.
planning board's meeting tomorrow, so I don't know if she was gonna ask them whether that was appropriate to do that or not, but, and if it's within the scope of what they're doing anyway, you know, then that would seem to fit, you know.
Sure.
If it had to be done separate, then I guess that would be the other discussion we'd have to have, is did we have to, you know, hire him out separately?
Sure.
And
So,
have an outside consultant do the review.
yeah, so we're open to it, I mean, it makes sense to have, if Fred's comfortable doing that, I mean, he's the one that's gonna be out there doing the inspections on behalf of the planning board, you know, throughout the construction process anyway. So the other thing we can do is, I don't know if you wanna go through the construction sequence point by point, or whether we wanna just, I can give a brief overview as to how it's gonna be handled, and particularly how it's gonna, what's different by doing this during the winter months.
Why don't you start with an overview so we can get an understanding? and then
Okay.
If we need more detail, we'll ask.
Sure, so I'll probably want to open that up again. So to kind of recap, I mean, there's a lot of typical conditions that you guys have as far as a pre-construction meeting, who's in attendance to that, there's bonding that all needs to get in place, you know, assuming all that's been done, and everything is staked out. But one thing I will say, the erosion control has already all been installed, so it's in place now.
The other thing I would just say is this, this crossing is right here. The road, that's approximately right here. This road up to about here was paved about 2 weeks ago. So we're ready to continue.
I think that was after you did your site visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the wetland area right through here. This is the road coming through. These dark lines here are the retaining walls. And this here, these dashed lines, that is basically the limit of the concrete culvert, the arch culvert.
Yeah.
So the first step in the process is to come in, obviously we're assuming all the erosion control and everything's in. Once we begin work, what they're looking to do is have tree cutters come in, cut down the trees within the area of, within the limit of work. That's gonna be stumped and grubbed, and then the top and subsoils are gonna be removed. And that basically is the initial preparation for the work. And the one caveat we'll say, and this being the dry time of year, number one, but also during the winter months, one of the reasons where wetland crossings can be easier in the winter is with the frozen ground, the area under the proposed culvert is basically gonna remain wetlands. And the idea here is to gingerly come across that, leave that wetland soil and everything in place. So even though they're gonna be stumping and clearing, you know, this area here under the proposed culvert is kind of going to be flagged.
How do they do it gingerly? I don't understand how they get the equipment across gingerly.
So when I say-
can't carry it.
Yeah, so basically, you're going to limit the amount of time you're going to go over. And the other thing, Bob, you what they do is, with an excavator, you can walk up on the bucket and go over. The example I'll use is when they're digging cellar holes, for instance. The first thing they do is they go in and they put footings in. And then when in order to get the excavator over, they can kind of walk over those footings in a way that, with a heavy excavator, they don't crush the footing. They basically use that same technique or principle, when going across this area. Not to mention it's going to be frozen. I mean, so, if you were doing this during the spring or the summer, you're going to get tire ruts and whatnot at this point.
Can I ask?
Sure, yeah.
We just heard there's only like 2 inches or so of snow now left. It had been cold, but it hadn't really frozen. I didn't think there's a deep frost. I guess, would it be better to use mats or something? I mean, I'm not sure that the ground is that frozen. What are the conditions, like, if the commission agreed today and the project was going to start, by the end of the week, what are the conditions now as far as the ground being frozen there?
There's a few inches of frost.
But that's going to cause ruts. That's not
Yeah.
It's not
It's
like
gonna
2
warm
feet.
up
It's supposed
the end
to
of
be
the
warm
week.
next
It's
Well,
in
that's-
the
I mean,
50s, yeah.
We certainly can use mats. I mean, it's not just.
Yeah, I mean, just with you saying that it's not going to cause ruts, I can't imagine that this.
I'm not
that's
necessarily saying it's
frozen
not
is
going to
gonna-
cause ruts. All I'm saying is if it is frozen, you're less likely, or it's going to minimize, could be less of an effect of other times during the year.
I guess I just don't know how frozen the ground is. That's what my real question was. Is it really frozen or is it only a couple of inches?
Well, it's hard to say in that area. I mean,
You haven't checked it out.
no, I mean, we're testing tomorrow and the rest of the week, and I'll, obviously know more tomorrow. But the last time we were out, I
You mean
it
your
depends-
soil testing? Or?
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah.
So it's not a deep frost where we can't do earthwork right now. And it depends on where you are, to be honest.
Carol, is there any disadvantage in using mats?
I don't know. This is the first project I've really had with somebody wanting to do work in a wetland in the winter, so I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with it. I mean, I would think, when it's, I guess part of my question is that material is material we're going to use for the replication area. So I don't think we necessarily wanted to have equipment trespassing all over it and compacted.
Well, it's actually, it's not going to be used.
It's not going to be used in the replication area.
No, because it's going to remain in place, and that's kind of what we're talking about.
Okay, you're saying, so just under the culvert
Correct.
is the area. So
Correct.
that's,
The rest of
okay.
it is going to be, they're going to basically excavate that and
Put the
stockpile
footings.
for.
Okay, so that width is what the culvert area is, like 12 feet?
Right, and that's why I'm saying,
Yeah.
you
So,
can kind of get
so
over it.
that area, is that area going to be excavated now? That material?
The goal is to leave the area underneath the culvert in place. It's not going to be excavated.
Okay, why is that the goal?
Because if you excavate it, you're going to disrupt it more, and then you got to basically bring it back and put it in place.
Okay,
If
so
you can- if
what
you
is
can
the
leave-
replication area on the side replicating?
This here,
Yeah.
we're just talking about the area under the culvert. Basically, from here to here is wetlands. So there's a larger portion of that that's all going to be filled.
Okay, so why aren't we using that material, that wetland material, in that replication area?
We are.
I just thought you said we're not excavating it. Maybe I'm
All right,
getting.
let's
confused.
let's
They're not
back
excavating
up
the
small.
culvert.
Right.
It is
Culvert.
confusing.
But on
So
either
what I'm
side.
trying to say is
Right.
the area under the culvert. Okay, so we're not talking about the whole area, just the area under the culvert. And this is important because in order to get this done with the least amount of impact, and during a dry point of year, this is important because if you go to install this, like at the time we did Houghton, where there's water flowing through here, it makes it more problematic. So at this point, it's probably, I don't even know how wide this culvert is. I think it's only about 20 feet.
Where are the lines for the culvert? Because there's so many
Okay,
lines
wait, maybe
here.
go to the,
This
can you go to the
dashed line
profile plan, or the side view of
This is the culvert right here, Brandon?
Yep.
Right in here.
Yep.
And
Or I
these
can give you the
lines
chalk
are
drawings
footings?
if you want.
No, these lines here, these are 2 pipes that kind of run across, and again, let's flip it.
And what are the pipes for?
Here, do you want to use this one, the shop drawing?
Which one were you looking for?
The stamp drawing?
Sure.
Would that,
So we're talking about a 12-foot span. And basically, when this is all said and done, this is going to remain wetland soil underneath.
okay, but then
Just
the
let
other
these two
both
pipes-
Hang on
sides.
one second. Stop for a second, because
Yep.
I'm losing you. Here's the
page we had before. The original book. So, this is this right here,
Yeah,
going
right,
through.
Bob, it's also up here,
Yeah.
just to see.
So, this over here, is that wetlands too on the other side of the
Yes,
culvert?
yes,
Okay, so this
That's
was
what-
wetlands over here,
correct.
And
then
But
you're gonna-
basically comes all the way to here,
the wetlands do.
yeah.
Yes.
So this is the area that's not gonna be wetlands because you're gonna be having this
Exactly.
structure here, what I don't know what we'd call that structure, a bridge?
Retaining wall.
Yeah, that's the
A
going
bridge?
Yeah.
Is this considered a bridge? I just don't know.
This technically is a bridge, yeah.
Okay, so this area is gonna be disturbed
Yep,
over here, and this area you're gonna try to leapfrog somehow, or
Yep.
with the machines, where you do some sort of dance with the bucket and lift it up and swing it around. I don't understand exactly how you get
Yep.
over that without disturbing that.
Can I say, keep
Yes.
in mind one thing? The order would allow us to disturb this area.
Okay, but then you have to replicate it.
Well, we just have, yeah, we would have to put the soil back underneath the arch.
Okay.
So what we're trying to say is we think we can do it
Without.
without disturbing it. But in other words, the order would allow us to come in and take all of the topsoil here and store it, right, for reuse later in the replication.
So this,
Here's my
this
question.
soil here, just so, because that's what's going over here?
Yes,
yeah.
This soil from here and here
Exactly.
is you're gonna store someplace
correct.
and put it over there.
Right.
So that wasn't clear when you were first talking about going down, as you were showing it on that plan. So this material you are taking out. You are excavating that material for the replication.
He's saying, yeah.
We just haven't got there yet, just because when we were just talking about cutting the trees and everything.
Yeah.
I know, but Bob brought up the question, and somebody was like, you're gonna gingerly go down here, and then I was like, I didn't understand what you meant when you started talking about mushroom
Yeah,
bucket through the.
gingerly and excavated don't seem to go
The
together
point
to me.
the point we're
That's-
trying to make here, Bob,
Yeah.
is, you know, if we disrupt this area here, like you're saying, if we just say, you know, the hell with it, let's
Yeah.
just blow, you know, we've got an order of conditions, let's just blow through there and we'll put it all back. My concern is, you know, this is a wetland here.
Yeah.
And basically, the sheet flow comes through this area.
Mhm.
If you just rip it out, grub it, and then you just put new loam back in there, it's subject to erode a lot easier than
Okay.
if we can leave it in place.
Okay,
So, what I'm trying, you know, my advice, and while they're out there, is basically, they shouldn't have to go over this very many times, and basically the rule of thumb is the limit to at least you can. And if you do have to go over here, is basically take precautions, whether it's matting, whatever it takes to not
Biggest
destroy.
so you think a matting would help?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You could even put plywood down, and, you know, that's what they use, you know, when you unload an excavator on a road, you know, to protect it, you know, it's just displaces the
So,
weight that much.
so before you go on, so so you were talking about cutting and grubbing.
Yeah.
So to get to the other side, you're going through the area that of this material here with your equipment to cut and grub?
We're gonna have to go,
Or are you gonna excavate that first? That was where I'm not sure I'm
yep,
satisfied yet,
and
right?
and we haven't got past that. So basically, the idea is to cut and grub everything in here.
Okay, but so then therefore, you're gonna be cutting the wetland that we wanna restore, use to restore. So you're gonna have equipment going through in there, right? You're gonna be having log hauling trucks and everything?
Correct.
Before you
They're gonna
remove
come
this,
through.
before
Yeah.
you remove this wetland material?
Yeah, you can't remove loam until the trees are gone.
So I guess, wouldn't it make more sense to do it in the process of you go in and you're cutting the trees that are in that replication area and then you're removing that loam? Rather than having the vehicles trespassing and compacting it and potentially leaching oils and gas and stuff into the replication
So I
material?
think what you're asking is, can we excavate all the loam without taking the trees down?
No, no.
Okay, so what are you saying?
I'm
She's
s-
saying, do sections at a time, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm
In other words,
saying,
do this section,
Take out the trees. and
take out the
excavate.
trees, remove the soils, stockpile it for the replication, then do this
do
area
your
over here.
crossing section, your 12-foot crossing, you know, put your mat down, and then cut your trees on the other side, the far side, and remove that material.
Because what Carol's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you go and you do the cutting, the grubbing, you're gonna have equipment going across, and then you have to come back over, and then when you remove the soils, you have to go back a second time. So she's wondering if you just go once and do up to here, cut, grub, remove the soil, stockpile, then do this, You only have to go back and forth once instead of twice.
Okay, well, and
The
then
way
let me
they do
ask
that
before
is
you
the
get there,
problem.
so are you only going as far as the end of this area when you're talking about this initial phase? And how many times do you think vehicles are going back and forth across it then really?
There's-
I mean, you're not going beyond the rest of the road to cut and grub at that point until you get the culvert and the bridge and the retaining wall and everything in, right?
The process of when you're building a road is to do, I mean, if you didn't have a crossing here, the process would be you do things in a certain step by step and you do them completely. Otherwise, you end up with a very messy construction site. So the idea would be, we would propose, the best way to do it would be to come in, send in the tree cutter, and yes, he will cut here, and then he's beyond the wetland, let him continue.
But my concern with
But-
continuing is
but-
then you're gonna keep having
No,
equipment
he
coming
doesn't-
back
he
over.
That's
doesn't-
exactly-
He does not need to come
Yeah.
back, he'll come back out once.
You've got a lot of trees there.
No, no,
That's
he's
gonna
just
be
gonna,
more than.
yeah,
he's
so let me just-
no, he's
I
just
think-
gonna
yeah.
stockpile the trees over here, we're not gonna remove
Oh,
them.
you're not logging
We're
and
not-
If you've
hauling
never
them.
seen,
We're not
this is
taking
kind of
it.
what I talked to Andy about, and I think when, the way they cut these is a machine with a.
Yeah, it's a
wrap-
super axe hacker.
It's gonna basically take it through, so they're gonna go through, I mean, that's why you're not limiting trips. I mean, if he drives in 20 feet, cuts them down, backs up, and then somebody comes in and excavates, so he doesn't, I mean, he's gonna basically come through, cut, and he's gonna cut, and he grabs them, and he's just gonna keep going right through. I mean, they're gonna cut that in an hour, you know? And then once he's through, what we're saying, the precaution we're taking is, we don't want him to come back. We don't want him to drag all the logs back through the crossing. We want him to get up through there, and then make him stockpile all the logs and the debris up here. And the other reason is we want him to chip some of those, which we'll get into later, so we have wood chips available to do some stabilization things. So we'd like him to basically come through once, cutting. You know, on this side, you know, if it's easier, you can stockpile, but, you know, basically push right through and stockpile on the other side. And any cutting that's done on the other side is gonna stay on the other side until the crossing's in.
Right, and then what's the next step?
Then the next step would be to come in with an excavator and excavate out the top of the subsoil. And as that's being done, they're
Who
gonna.
does the stumping? Is that done in between those two?
It's done right after they cut, and that's the.
Is that a different machine, or is that the
No, it's an excavator. So
Yeah.
basically, the excavator's gonna come in, he's gonna be popping the stumps, and he's gonna be excavating out the loam. And he's gonna be
That's one
loading-
step,
It's
the
one
stump
step.
and the excavator.
And he's gonna load up trucks, and they're gonna move it, and they're gonna put it over here. So again, that's one step, and he's gonna go right through. And he-
So a question,
Yeah,
if he goes through and he continues here, the truck's gonna follow him across at this point?
What trucks?
The trucks for whatever you're digging up. You said you're gonna have trucks dig it up and move it.
yes, I mean, that's
So
the only way we can get this loam over here
Yeah.
is to go across.
So how far do they have to
how
remove the
many
loam?
trucks and how
Are they
many-
going up here to remove loam?
And here's the thing, Bob, if that's a concern, I mean,
Yeah.
we can basically take everything on this side, and we can stockpile it over here until it's in, and we can move it later. That's really not an issue.
I think that is a concern.
No, I'm saying.
I mean, I think
it's
that
not
we'd
an-
like to
it's-
limit the amount
it's
of
not
time.
an-
It's not an issue for
going
It's
him.
not
on.
an issue for us to.
Yeah, no, I
stockpile.
think we'd like to limit that. That's what we're
Yeah.
trying to get at, you know, is
Goal,
understand the
you can
process.
move
The
it back after
absolute
it's
goal,
paved.
the absolute, what we want to do here is to not have any back and forth traffic.
So I think that's a good point.
We know
Bob. Yeah, so basically, everything on this side will stockpile over here, and that.
And where's the upland resource line on this from the wetlands? This is the wetlands here.
Buffer zone?
Yeah, the
This
buffer
is this
zone.
one here, yeah.
So you're going into the buffer zone from here, and on this side, which is the line up here?
It's right here.
Okay.
Okay. So once all that's excavated out, then the next thing is to basically do.
So this soil, when this is excavated, where will that go?
Well, that's what we're saying, now we'll stockpile it outside the resource area up here.
Is that gonna be reused down here?
Yeah.
The soil here too?
The wetland soil is gonna go there,
Okay.
yeah. The upland loam will be stockpiled to be used.
So all the cuttings, all the stumps, all the trees, and all the soil will be
It's gonna be stockpiled.
stockpiled
on
up
the side.
there? And on this side, where's everything gonna be stockpiled? Where's the line
We
again?
can,
There's a lot of
it's right
lines. There it
here.
is.
Yeah.
You could have different colors,
yeah.
So
We'll
everything has to be
stockpile that.
stockpiled outside of here?
Exactly. So basically, nothing will be stockpiled inside the buffer zone. Then the next important phase, while it's dry, would be to put the crossing in, which
Yeah.
consists of excavating out and pouring the footings for the arch.
So you excavate on
Can I
this
ask
side
before you
and
go
this
there?
side?
Yep.
Before you get
Yep.
there, what about the tree grubbing? Did you go down all the slope at this point, or just in the roadway?
They're gonna do everything inside of the hay field line, everything within the limit.
Okay, because that's another concern I have, is all of that graded area in there.
Straw
This-
bales,
Yeah.
straw
Yeah.
bales.
This area is.
Do you have them in already?
They're all installed.
Are they straw or hay?
They're straw.
Matter of fact, we did everything in straw.
Good. Because the hay has a lot of seeds in
We
it.
did
It defeats the
everything. The
purpose.
whole phase was done in straw.
But I guess so my concern, and I brought this up at the very beginning, which Andy wasn't present for, but is the slope on that area. And the overall intention of limiting the work to not just the dry time, but a season when there's the least amount of area that has to be disturbed, is that you get things stabilized quickly. And we're not in that time frame if we allow the project to go forward now. So I'm trying to figure out if there's ways to limit how much gets disturbed with still allowing potentially any
Can't they
phases
put
to go
mats down
forward.
on all the disturbed area on the
We plan
slopes?
to.
So we're gonna get there with that, and that's the biggest thing, is basically time management, and whatever they start excavating on a day, they need to finish and stabilize that same day. That's the big thing when you're dealing with winter excavation. Talking to Andy's site guys, basically for him to come in and stump and grub everything within this buffer zone, he says about a day's worth of work.
Okay, and so that's including the
That's
slope
including-
down in here. Is it including the
Everything
detention
within.
basin area, all in that?
No, at this point, the main focus is getting this crossing in. So we're looking at a day's worth of work would be to stump and grub and haul the material out.
All right, and this slope that you're talking?
Yep, all the way
So
up.
include that when you just
Yep.
show that area, not just the
Yep.
crossing, but that whole area.
Yep.
So the guy comes in, he comes to his machine, he starts cutting the trees down,
Yeah.
and you say he continues all the way down to the end of the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
All right. And then he stockpiles the stuff here, and then the bulldozer comes in here and pulls the stumps,
Excavator.
excavator, takes the stumps, moves the soil and everything.
Yeah.
That's all in one day?
Yeah.
You can do all this, including all the way down to the
No,
cul-de-sac?
no, not this part down there. This operation here will be on a completely different time frame basis than the rest.
Okay, so
Because everything else is.
so they'll be
not
working
wetland.
down here once they're passed?
Excuse
They're
me.
gonna continue to work down here once they're past the crossing?
The construction
Correct.
sequence that we're preparing is for the area subject to the order conditions, which
So
we're
I-
really talking about this 200.
But I think-
But no, I have a
What Bob's
question,
asking
I
is-
want to ask my question. Are they gonna be coming back over here?
Right.
No.
So they're gonna stay here until the culvert is finished?
Correct,
No equipment's gonna come back over until the culvert's
correct.
finished?
We're not having back and forth traffic.
All right, so there'll be no, once they come and cut the trees and they continue to go down here, if this is not ready, they sit their machines there and wait till it's
Well,
ready?
we are going to need probably 2 excavators to work this area.
But that's doing the crossing.
But that's
Right.
working.
Right, but that's
To build it.
not the
Are they,
log
are those
equipment.
excavators
No,
gonna
not the
continue
log.
down the road afterwards?
Excuse
Are
me.
those excavators gonna continue down the road after they do the crossing? Are they gonna back up at this point?
Well, once the crossing's in, they'll be able to go back.
Well, how long does it take you to do the crossing? You have
It's
to
a
put the
method.
footings and you have to, the footings
Maybe-
harden, right? And if it's cold, you can't lay the footings if it's too cold.
Yeah, well, they put calcium in there.
Yeah, but you only can get so much calcium. After a
Yeah.
while, it gets too
Yeah.
soft. So you have,
I
you
mean,
need
the
a
whole
certain
job-
temperature, you have to have
Yeah.
tents with heaters and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that whole job, I mean, even taking into account extra time, they're looking at like a week to put that in,
Okay.
you know?
So my concern is, once these equipment, I don't care if they work down here, I just don't want them coming back
Didn't I?
until this is finished.
Right. And that's been the concern we've got, and that's kind of what we've been talking about.
All right.
Well, except for then I jump to the other side. So is there a reason that can't be left not
that's-
stumped, at this, until we're closer to a time frame where it's actually going to be regraded?
Over here, you're talking
Yeah,
about, Carol.
yeah.
I don't understand the
The-
question.
Well, my
They're
concern
gonna
is
cut
that-
this too.
Yes, they're cutting all of that, and I'm
It's
trying
on
to
a
see if there's a
slope.
way of minimizing the amount of area that's disturbed because of the seasons that we're in, and that they're not gonna be able to stabilize it. Maybe you're gonna propose these blankets or whatever,
Okay, so you're
but
talking about doing this part later? is
I'm
what-
just asking if that's a possibility.
The, this area here, as you know, is the wetland
Right.
replication
Right.
area. This area here is the aura.
Right.
So if we just turn to that page, just so we can see it. So this is wetland replication, and then, which is this. And then above that, we have the aura. So what we had planned on doing was bringing this down to the grade immediately prior to when you would put the stockpiled soil from the wetland. In other words, don't put that in, put it back immediately. And same thing right here. Do the same thing over here.
So as you're doing the crossing, you put all that soil back in there on that same week? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
no, we're gonna stockpile it. We're gonna stockpile the soil from the wetland area elsewhere.
Okay, so I know we're jumping around a little bit, so I apologize if
It's
it's getting
because
confusing.
there- as
But
you-
you didn't have in your narrative when you were gonna do the wetland work.
Actually, I do now.
Okay, you do, but you didn't, so.
Right, so
So
I-
so when are you proposing to do it? I don't get what you're saying, when you're gonna do it.
And would it be more helpful maybe to have the narrative in front of you so you
Well, it
you
would
can
have
see
been, we
it?
probably shouldn't, I don't know, we probably should have had it revised before we even got into the whole discussion,
Well, I
honestly, but.
didn't, I figured I would revise it after the meeting, but
Yeah.
it is done based on, we have revised it. But in any event, as you're built, what happens here is, you know, if we could, you obviously need to cut the trees down. You need to pull the stumps out before you build anything. What the very next step is, you put the footing in for the arch culvert. Then a crane's gonna come, put the culvert in place. Then you're gonna be, these are blocks. So you put down the blocks, starting next to the culvert, because that's the lowest point.
Yep.
Obviously, you're gonna start at the low point. And then, you're gonna be starting, this is the bottom. In other words, eventually, the road is up here, okay? So this is the bottom, here's the low point. So the first row of, you put this in, these are the footings. Those go in first because everything, you know, you have those, that's the beginning point of the work. The next thing that's gonna happen is this gets placed here by a crane. The next thing that happens is you're gonna put in this first row all the way across. The very next thing that happens,
One way,
yes,
does the crane stop here and put its arm out to put that down? Does the crane have to come down here?
it's gonna happen, however long
It's
it
gonna-
can reach.
It's gonna drive up to where it can reach, and then it's just gonna place it. It doesn't have to go over the crossing, but it's gonna drive up to it.
So it'll be in the wetland?
It's gonna be within the
Oh, the
limit.
wetland's not gonna be there, really.
That's gonna be grubbed out, it's gonna be within the limit.
It's gonna be on, in other words, the soils, the top soils that are going in the replication area will no longer be there.
Okay,
So it's gonna be a clean working area.
okay.
Then the next thing that happens is you put the first row of blocks in all the way across. The next thing that happens is.
Are those man-made or are they stone?
They're just big concrete blocks.
Yeah,
Concrete
they're
block.
man- yeah,
But they make
Did
them
you
look
see them
like
at Houghton
stone.
Farm?
Yeah, they make them look like
You
stone, that's why I
can't
didn't
get
know.
that, yeah.
The very next thing that happens is you're gonna have dirt, structural fill come in. And if, let's say the block is this high, you know, and you're gonna have 2 rows of them on either side of the road, you're gonna bring in structural fill that deep. And now, you're no longer on the wetland. So very quickly, you don't need to, in other words, and so then you're just repeating steps. Then you put in the next row of blocks,
You're gonna
and
build
more
a
dirt.
lot
So
of.
very quickly, you're not driving
And
on the
other
wetland.
thing
It
is-
doesn't have to be built completely all the way up to here for that to occur. You only need to get in 1 row of blocks.
You don't need to get over the culvert?
They're gonna.
Well, you're not gonna be driving, you do need to get over it to drive it. But what I'm saying is, while you're building, right, the very first thing that happens is,
Okay.
you've got blocks on either side, you're putting down the structural fill.
And the fill goes in the middle of the blocks?
Yeah, so
In
they're basically,
between them,
picture
yes.
Legos, you know, they're gonna actually build several courses out.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like two walls going down. They're just gonna
Yeah.
be backing trucks up and dumping material.
Are they gonna be red or blue Legos?
They're gonna be blue. Unless you
Whatever
have a
color you
preference,
want.
you know?
Well, you have to do a study
They'll
on
look
that.
like
yeah.
stone.
It'll take a month.
So we're gonna try to make them look
6 months.
natural. So it's not, and then the work area, again, you're not driving on the wetland anymore because it's,
Well, once the culvert's put in, that's 10 feet, 8 feet high. They're not gonna be able to get through. And that's why the first priority is basically to set the footings and get that in.
Yeah.
And then as they build the walls up, they're gonna be bringing in fill, and they're just gonna be laying it list. They're gonna be dumping fill, and they're gonna have a compactor, and they're gonna be bringing it up and building their way up.
it's not like you're driving over the wet. Very soon, you're not really driving, you're driving over the road.
And obviously, once you get up above the height here, you can start getting across and getting the fill into the inside.
Okay, so can we go back to some of the other questions?
Yes.
Like, what, so, when are you thinking of putting the soil from the wetland into the replication area?
Well, the idea, well, it relates to your question over here.
Right.
We're going, the work that's, so the bulk of the work is in between these lines. Because obviously, once you build, you've got a wall on both sides, you're working it within that confined area. You're not over in here at all, or over in here at all.
But you're over in here, right?
Well,
You have to grade
prior
all
to
that.
the wall getting up too high
Yeah.
and raising the height of the road, you've got to be doing this grading
You do the grading.
so you can reach it. Because once this is built, you're way up over here. You follow what I mean? You're raising this area.
Right, you're raising it
So-
so these two sides meet.
Right. Right. So we would want to do this work as this is going up. While it's low, we would want to excavate this area out to the point where what's left to do is to bring back the ore material, the topsoil, and put that, but not put that material in until we were far enough along with this so that there's, we're not gonna disturb it from any construction
All right.
going
And
on.
how are you
And
gonna
then-
stabilize
Right.
this in the meantime?
So how they're basically gonna phase this, so, they're gonna break it down by, you look at the forecast, you had a couple good days, where there's
Yeah.
days where there weren't. All this is gonna be trucked in material, so you're not dealing with material with frost in it. It's all gonna be dumped in place,
Wait,
all the
the
fill.
oral
All this area.
is trucked in material? Oh, no, you're looking at the road.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
talking about
I
how
had this
how
up,
we're
I
gonna,
can't see.
how we're gonna get like the side slopes in.
Yeah,
All this material's gotta be structural material, it's all gonna be
Yeah,
town spec
right.
and all that. So all that's gonna be brought in and it's gonna be graded. And once, they're gonna have to work in small segments so they can bring it in and they can finish grade it all in one step without it freezing. And then they're gonna use jute netting, to basically, or blankets to stabilize those slopes.
Are blankets more efficient for that than just the nets? Are they gonna use both?
They can use either one, I mean, they both work. I mean, the netting, you have tie backs, they get close to the wall, I mean, they wanna use blankets. Anything that's gonna sit on the top that's gonna anchor that in place.
I just know that the meetings I've been to, they stress the blankets. Have you found that to be true, Carol? too?
well, again, I haven't observed a lot of in winter
I'm just talking about in
conditions.
general.
And so
Yes.
for erosion control, I think a blanket would sound like it's probably better, but I don't really know how do they attach the blankets in and what happens underneath it if there's frost heaving and water gets penetrated through, does anything happen under the blanket?
Well, it all gets staked in, to answer your first part of the question.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why, they're looking to bring all the material and do it in one shot. So you're not, where you have issues with frost is if you do a section of work and then it rains, you get snow, you get frost in it, and then you build on top of it. And the idea is to basically fill and bring it all up to grade in one shot, so you're not gonna have layers of frost.
But they might only have much time to do this first and then do this section depending on the weather. is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Yeah,
As
that's
long
you're
as they
not
get
really
this
doing
up
it
to
all at one
grade.
time, I guess, is
So
what
if
you're
they
saying.
get this up to
It's-
grade,
it's all
they
phased.
can then put the blanket on this
Exactly.
section here.
Yep, yep.
But so, again, with the blankets, again, I don't have the experience with a blanket. Can water get underneath it and you get erosion underneath and you're not seeing it at that point? Like with jute netting, you'd be able to see it holding and functioning better?
What
You
are
could.
blankets made of? I've never seen these things.
A couple
Assume
of
it's not fleece.
recycled materials. I mean, it's designed to hold it in place even with water. That's kind of,
It's not foolproof, but
Yeah.
I think blankets are the best practices now, is what they were stressing.
I don't think you're opposed to either one, I mean, whatever. I mean,
Well, so
I mean-
to answer Jan's question, I don't know what they're made out of either. Is it
We're gonna
coconut?
use-
Is it,
Frankly, we would use what's most effective.
so
you
we'd
may-
want to get some specs,
You
because we
might,
don't know
well, you
anything
might,
about it.
well, even,
Well,
you might
actually,
start
they're-
out with one and then, or you might try both and one type may work better than another. I mean, you're gonna use what's,
I think this,
So-
I mean, Mike's already spec'd one, I mean, all these things kind of are in place, whether it's winter or summer, so I think some of these in this
Robert
plan
already
set,
called for
you know,
those.
he's called out some of those specs.
Do you have, I don't remember them in the
I
spreadsheets.
so.
I know it's mentioned in your narrative, but I don't remember. Gordon, if you want to come up, I don't know if you can see what we're looking at. Oh, well, come on up to the table.
You come up, you don't have to sit back there.
This is Century Mill Estates, the subdivision.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Okay.
You know, one of the problems we have, Carol, is when we get these plans sent from the computer, our screens are only so big, and it's impossible to look at these things.
Yeah.
So I think that we should require people to get them earlier so we can see hard copies, you know, larger plans.
I have one set in the office.
Yeah, so this is, you're calling for a blanket. And these are the staples, you know, how they anchor it.
Yep. And what, does it say what the blanket's made of?
Max, what do you know? Did you have that?
I'm using the coconut core logs, and that's not really blankets. So I don't really know.
What'd you say the
I
first
don't-
thing was? Coconut what?
Core logs, kind of like the
Like the wattle?
wattle, but made of coconut core. Or and the netting, just made of.
Gonna try.
So I guess just to jump back to the overview again.
Yep.
So as I said, the slope is one of my areas of most concern because it's fairly steep and you're right at the edge of the wetland with the project there.
Yep.
And
which is why I thought not to immediately place the topsoil material.
okay, is that clear in your new narrative?
Yes.
Okay. What is the condition today now, since we've had rain, in terms of the wetland itself? I mean, are we gonna have to do any kind of bypass flow?
I don't think so. To answer your question, I think the groundwater level is still low. I mean, there's certainly no, I haven't been up
I
there.
mean, well, because I would say, so I went to Fifeshire a few weeks ago, and everything was really, really low there, but it seems like there's more water, you know, like in that big pond area seems a little bit higher, and so I just don't know the conditions, you know, in the stream. I haven't been over your site to see the conditions there now.
I haven't either.
I mean, we had to go through that area to put the hay bales in. It's hard.
Is there water though? I mean, is it?
No.
No, so it's
There's
still,
no
it's still.
surface water. And
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is, we're assuming that the groundwater levels are still low, and that's why we're testing tomorrow. You know, even though in areas like Fifeshire, you know, when it freezes like this and we get these rains, you know, where everything is frozen, it's got crust, everything's
okay.
sheeting off, and so you're seeing high volumes of water in these low areas, like the flats, areas like that. But I think the groundwater levels they're on their way up, for sure. I mean, we've got a lot of precipitation in the last month, but they're still not high, or they're probably still below normal.
So say, again, you know, the project gets approved to start and we end up getting, you know, weeks and weeks of rain and we end up, you know, kind of at a point where you're gonna have to do something else. Do you have I mean, that's sort of part of the winter, you know, how do we deal with stuff?
How long do you think this will take from the time you start cutting the trees till the crossings
Well, I
done?
think what they're saying, that it's about a week, and that's
Just
why,
one week.
to basically.
A week of good weather.
A week, and that's even putting in
Wait, including
a couple
this-
fluff days, yeah, I mean,
And then this is replicated in spring, is that right? Or are the-
I don't know when it's replicated there.
The,
so, yeah.
we planned on placing the topsoil.
Yeah,
In other words, we would excavate out
yeah,
now to the elevation.
Yeah.
So it's prepared, and the only thing that's left to do is place the topsoil and plantings.
okay, so
the
that's the
reason
only
why we
thing,
wanted-
that's done in spring.
Yeah.
Everything else only takes a week.
to get, and what we're talking about is to get the crossing and everything.
Oh,
'Cause that's really where we're looking to intercept the water table, you know. When you start building the wall and filling and all that, at that point, you're already up on high ground, so to say. The initial, part of the initial excavation too is gonna be to excavate out the replication area. And again, the reason, that's not necessarily something we have to do, that's just a recommendation. I think we should excavate it now while the groundwater levels are down. Because ideally, what we'd like to do in the spring, you come in, you place your loam, the water table's gonna be up, and that's the time we wanna plant seed. You know,
Plus you have a wall
Okay.
here, so,
But this needs to be stabilized till spring, is that what I
Correct.
understand?
yes, yes.
And what's the effect, I wonder, of the alternate freezing and thawing through spring, up, you know, on this steep slope? What's the effect of the alternate freezing? and
That's why you
thawing?
put the blanket on.
That's, yeah, that's
And
why we
that-
want the blanket, yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't move. I'm just trying to see.
And the other method that we're looking to do is obviously wood chipping, you know, used at like twice the application rate that you typically use on any other area, you know, mild slopes or flat areas that we need to stabilize that obviously you can't get vegetation to grow.
So where would you use to do that?
Slopes probably that are less than, or greater than 3 to 1, and then slopes that are greater than 2 to 1, would probably go to a blanket.
So for instance, you know,
Here's a blanket.
you're gonna blanket in here, you know, but over on this side, it's not really that steep, you know, but you'd probably wanna just get some mulch cover.
Which, everything we're talking about is
Haven't got that.
written down in
Just the
May.
picture that you'd like. You're not
So
saying-
everything we've discussed
Because
so
they've had it
far
in some of the
is right
Conservation
here,
Commission meetings that I've gone to.
including like, because you asked that question,
Yeah,
how are we gonna stabilize? I mean, basically what we have right now is a dry area and the ground's frozen. So,
so from, I'm still not
Synthetic.
sure about the week's
And that's
timeframe, I guess.
Synthetics.
So you're at station
Synthetic.
450 now,
It's all plastic.
right? That's where you ended station 450?
Approximately.
Okay, and what's the edge of the crossing end there? Like where the resource area edge is on the far side of the crossing?
like the wetland line?
No, the far side of where the ore is, the outside ore edge, on the
here,
far
here.
side of, yeah. So you,
That's-
like, I'm just, like,
It's 1,000.
1,100?
About 1,000, station 1,000.
1,000. So if you're doing things to bring in the structural material to get to your crossing, and that's all in the ore area, that you're saying that and the crossing's gonna be done within a week?
No, we're specifically talking about when we go to start work, to put the crossing in, you gotta put the crossing in before you bring the fill in.
I thought you were gonna be also bringing, you're gonna put your crossing in first, okay.
He's talking about
Okay,
the
so when is
arch
the?
The long
okay.
process is
So
bringing the fill
I'm
in.
sorry, all right, so your crossing's gonna get done first, then you're gonna start doing the slope part after that, so.
Well, the next thing, once
But
the
it-
crossing's in, you're
but
gonna
the
build
slope's
the
gonna be
wall.
cut first, so when do you blanket it? I guess that's the other thing. So you're gonna cut and grub your slope, because you wanna do that when you're doing your cutting and grubbing, you're saying. But when are you gonna stabilize that then?
it would be.
Well, here's the thing, I mean, I guess if we wanted to break it up, I mean, we could not stump and grub this. You know, we could basically only stump and grub what's required to get the wall in. Because basically, the first phase is to put the wall in and to bring the material in there. Then when they go to, you know, when they're ready to start bringing the fill in for that, and then they could stump and grub that then. If that, that's- I
When
mean-
would that bring us to?
well, I think what Carol's saying, I mean, it's at least, it's frozen, it's in place, and it's natural.
If you cut trees down, that's tree cutting. you haven't disturbed any
The
of the
soils and
soil.
everything.
When you pull stumps out
Oh,
of the
no,
ground.
no,
It's either gonna
That-
look like
that's what
a
disturbs
dirt
the soil,
lot,
I'm
or it's
not-
just gonna look like forest floor.
Well, I guess what I'm just trying to figure out is, and maybe I've said, you know, you're implying that maybe it should be done in a different phase, but the way Andy was describing it, so you start bringing in the fill material section, your road fill material, and you want to get your slope at that same grade. So if we had already cut and grubbed it, then we won't have necessarily blanketed it yet because you're bringing in fill.
Correct.
So we're going to have that period of time where it's going to be unstable without any kind of blanket or,
The material, well,
right?
the material that is going in here, as it's going, it is being compacted. It's not really loose. It's not
Well,
loose
after
material.
you've stumped it, it's going to be loose.
It's still gonna be loose to water, because, I mean,
Yeah.
you only can pack it so much, and then if you have water running, it's gonna wash away stuff. That's why you have grasses and bushes there, to protect it, so that's what the mat replaces, is the grasses and the bushes.
Yes.
So, the only question I kinda agree with Carol is, when is that mat, if this, because this thing was gonna take a week, correct? Now it's longer than a week? Because you didn't include
Well, I-
this in the
No,
week?
we're talking, I think that was the clarification, is when I said a week, we're talking about a week to get the culvert in, and basically to get this grubbed out and to get the culvert.
So how long is this gonna be exposed then, before the mat gets down?
Well-
That's the question I'd like to be answered.
My thought was to basically break it down, so you basically take a day to fill and do that, and as you do it, you're gonna mat it right afterwards. It's not gonna be a matter of weeks to put that in. It'd be the
So
same
I
as if
guess
you're-
my question is,
Yeah.
this takes a week, this is gonna be exposed for a week, and then you're gonna put the mat in after that week?
No.
Or is this mat gonna be put in as you're doing this in that same week?
As you're doing, basically, as you're filling and putting this in,
Yeah.
you're gonna be doing the mat.
Yeah, but it's already been grubbed and cut. That's my point. So I think once it's grubbed, you have disturbed area, and that then we have potential for, I don't know what that period is, a couple of weeks, maybe.
Right. Which
Right?
would be the same as if we did it in the summer, right?
Yes, it would be. It would be.
I mean, and same thing with building these slopes. I mean,
Yeah.
when we talk about matting in winter, it's,
Well, I think there's one difference,
yeah.
and that is that the work can be a lot more interrupted during the winter.
Yeah.
Because you can get a massive snowstorm, and you can't do anything because you got a foot of snow on it, and then that melts and you have the runoff. So that's why, I'm just guessing,
Right.
that's why it's usually not done in the winter, because you have more weather conditions that can upset the timetable.
Right, which is why, I mean, the goal is to basically, whatever you stop, you gotta start and stop it between weather patterns. That's kind of what we said
Right.
previously.
But once you grub it, it's exposed.
So, I mean, if you want, we just won't grub that portion of it. That's, I mean, it's not a big deal.
This is really stupid, but just curious, if this doesn't need to be grubbed until later,
Well, until they actually go to put the fill in.
why does it need to be grubbed at all? I mean, why?
Because they gotta
trees
grade it,
just
they have to
grow-
grade it to make,
It's considered I mean, you basically gotta get all of those organics out before you start bringing structural in, because otherwise,
water gets into the root system, and it's just like we have at Baishai Dam.
The current slope here
Yeah,
is not the same as
Okay.
the finished slope either.
all right, and so you need to get the trees.
and I guess, you know, if we're in an area where, say, it got half done, I mean, that's the point. The other thing is, we're looking to apply mulch. Yeah, you know, so say you got to a point, you didn't get to, it finished to the point where you're gonna mat it, we'll mulch it.
I don't think mulch is going to do a lot, to be honest.
Why
You
couldn't
think
this
it
be
is? I mean,
blanketed
I
right
mean,
after it's?
I just
Well,
see
the
so
slope's
many
not
places.
finished.
That's the part that makes me the most
Yeah, I guess-
nervous about the whole
Why
project.
couldn't it be blanketed right after it's grubbed?
Well, that's what we said, but I don't know, we're saying like, what if, you know,
Well, you
the
can't-
goal is
you
to
could-
basically.
Well, you
do-
could, but then you're doing it twice, right?
Which I don't really mind, I don't mind doing it twice. All I'm trying to say is, we're gonna keep the area stable. I mean, if we have to put down blankets, because we're not gonna be working there for a week, we'll do that.
Yeah, I think that you'd have to do that.
Well, it could even be less than a week, depending on the weather conditions in the winter.
Well, I mean, you can't, there's a balance of practicality, obviously. I mean, you can't blanket it
Well, that's the
every
concern.
day and unblanket
But
it
that-
every day.
No, I
No,
understand.
but
blanket
you
every
would
day.
have to blanket it if storm conditions were coming up. If we knew that there was gonna be a thaw and some heavy rains, you were gonna.
Oh, there's
need to
gonna be a
take-
lot of
and-
snowstorms.
And I think that's the other thing, is that, you know, some of the difficulties that I've seen on some other sites is, and I'm not saying it at all about this site, but I have seen in other construction cases where people have, you know, wanted to go, and they're not taking the precautions on the erosion control, you know, and that
It's the
is
same
gonna
thing
stop
on-
everything, right? Because it'll stop it in its tracks, because then we'll be back to enforcement action.
I mean, it's the same thing on drainage systems, which they're supposed to be doing through the SWIP, you know, the stormwater pollution prevention. Prior to any storm events, the site super is supposed to go through and make sure all the, you know, the silt sacks are in, or you got your hay bales in place to
Well, so this
protect
site
them.
is affected by the
Correct.
NIPD's, so has anything needed to be changed for that? You know, I mean, I don't know who's working on the site, you gave me a couple of names in the, or a new person who I haven't met with yet.
Hanu.
What was his name?
Hanu Vahakengas.
That was the first name?
He's Finnish. Hanu
Hanu.
Vahakengas.
I'll speak
You
with
sure
Hanu.
that's correct? You sure that's the correct pronunciation?
That's easy
Yeah,
for you to
sure.
say.
Is Hanu the person who is the NIPD's person, checking to make sure they're in compliance with everything? Or is that you?
That
or-
would be, well, there's a whole team on board here.
Okay, well, 'cause I-
Multiple engineers, you got Hanu, I'm out there, there's a team.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, because when you did the
we-
first phase, you had a clerk of the works.
Right.
You know, so, I mean, I'm trying to understand, you know, how this is gonna proceed and who's in charge of what part of it.
There is no
as well.
clerk of the works now?
There's a team there. I mean, there's an entire team. I wouldn't say, you asked me for, you know, who is the senior supervisor, in case you went out, I assume in case you went out to the site or there's a problem, who do you contact? So that's what I gave you, but there's a whole team. I mean, there's, you know, multiple engineers involved with this project, you know.
And that person's gonna be present at the initial site meeting, so, as we look at these things to make sure that they don't.
This site's well cared for. I mean, anytime you drive through it, it's kept very clean.
I do believe if we allow this to go through, that we're gonna have to have more, proper word is, I don't have a proper, we're gonna have to check on this more than normal.
Oversight.
Oversight, thank you.
Well,
We
the
have
way
to have a
we
lot
did
more
it, and I
oversight.
think Andy had it in his narrative, was, we used to do weekly meetings.
Well, I think it could be more than weekly, depending on the weather.
Yeah, I mean, and that was not an issue as well. I mean, if we
Yeah.
had to do it more frequently, we did, but we had a regularly scheduled weekly meeting.
Yeah.
And it extended beyond just the crossing. I mean, or just, well, I mean, at that point, you know, we were looking at detention basins and swales and all the other stuff. So it goes beyond more than what we've talked about here. It's not,
Right.
because, and honestly, we did have some areas, times when we did have problems with sediment. You know, we have had some sediment washed into the wetlands. So though it is a very well-maintained site, there have been times where things, you know, are not always
And
perfect.
like we've done on other sites with crossings, is notifying you of certain milestones, like when the footings are gonna go in. You know, so those are kind of the increased inspections that, you know,
So all that's been added here? Because there was an inspection report, but it didn't really say what was gonna be submitted, like what it was. I think you had something on inspections, but it wasn't really
Oh,
clear.
I didn't detail it because it's in the order of what has to be the report.
Oh, I guess I just didn't know what it was referring to.
Who signs off on the footings that they're acceptable? Is that the town engineer?
the town engineer's gotta be out there during all those.
Is the
steps.
structural person too, or not? Because he's not a structural engineer, I don't think.
Sure.
No, we just built it according to the plan.
Yeah. So I think you're at the question, at the point of, do you think you're gonna, well, I mean,
What I could do, I mean, with this area, I mean, if we're all in agreement, which I think it's common sense, that if you cut the trees down, but you don't do any grubbing, then you have a more stable soil condition. I mean, you have the current stable soil condition. What we can do is do it that way and leave the grubbing of this area until we need to. Then we wouldn't, I mean, if you give us like, leave it like that, because,
Well, I think we have to have discussion on when you're needed, what steps need to be taken then too. Like if, then all of a sudden you need it and it's still February and we're still in freeze and thaw, you know, then we need to know what you're.
no, but in other words, at that point, then we would
Yeah.
be doing the blanketing and the so forth. But if you
Yeah.
don't if you don't grub the area and remove the existing soils, what you have is stable condition.
Well, how much, the machine that comes and cuts the trees does cause some disturbance of the
Very
ground.
little. Very, very little. First of all, if the ground is hard as a rock. You know, I mean, it's frozen out there. So, and the machine is, has big, you know, rubber tires, and what happens is, it drives up to a tree, snips it, and holds it at the same time, and then drives away. It's very,
Even with 2 inches of frost.
They just drive away and let the tree off someplace.
correct.
All right, so it's going back and forth with these. I've seen the tires. I had it done when I built my house. I had one of those machines come in. It wouldn't let me drive it.
Yeah. I mean, but
I asked.
it's like he said, that, the clearing in this area, the tree cutting is a couple days, a day or 2 days, I mean, it'll be done. So, I mean, especially, you know, if you do it when it's.
I would say if they if they didn't do the grubbing, but we reserve the right to require a mat if it looks like it's been disturbed a lot.
Well, you don't have to require it. I mean, you can require, we would do it.
Yeah.
Just because that's the way you have to stabilize it.
Yeah, and
I'm just saying, we can hold off doing it until we sort of, for the
Well, I
sake
think-
of
I think,
building,
um,
need to.
If they don't grub it, if they don't take the stumps out, it'd be hard to put the mat down, you know, but there's other ways. I mean, they can use the wood chips, or they can use the jute netting, which they can go around the.
jute
the
netting
roots
might
and
be
stuff.
better than.
Yeah.
But-
But if you don't grub it, the soil's gonna be
Well,
pretty
hopefully,
much the way
right.
it
I mean,
is.
this is an experiment, is how I see it. You know, I mean, I know it's done, but it's just not done next to our wetlands as often, so it's,
Well,
for us, it's more of an
And
experiment.
then, you know, obviously, I know it's obvious, but even though some things are obvious, I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. You also still have the hay bale protection and the silt fence that's
Right.
in.
Right.
And the fact that it is the winter time right now is it's,
It's just that, Andy, every time
Right.
it's rained after it's been frozen, I thought, oh, thank God they're not working over there. So it's like, I mean, we've just been in that cycle.
I mean, the last rain we
Crazy.
had, I had these little lakes in the middle of my lawn where the snow didn't melt around it, but it was all the water, and they were like 2 feet deep. And it just sat there, and it was, so if that lets go, that could cause a lot of erosion.
well, we have other,
Well, they are working up there.
we have other precautions in our sequencing narrative to lessen like the amount, for example, with respect to rain, we're planning on, actually, here's the hay bale line on this side and the hay bale
Yeah.
line on this side. We would recommend to you to allow us to put some sandbags and create some air, like some V's, and then lay pipes across from here. Oop. And then, because you were asking if they're the same pipes, no, it's not the same pipe.
Okay, I didn't know what you were talking about for that.
Yeah, it's sandbag here to here, let's say, I mean, the crew drawer. This is the high side, so flow coming this way would then be channeled between the sandbag, then we would pipe, temporarily have these pipes laying on the ground, and then this would all be clean water, because you're collecting it before the work area and discharging it clean again.
Does that make sense, Carol? or-
It's
So-
a diversion.
It's basically, you know, it's a way to help, if there is a rainstorm like you're talking about, instead of the water.
Not
just
if,
come-
when.
coming across,
Which, I mean, to point out, I mean,
But
that's the
keep
same
in mind-
technique, and that's what you'd use in July.
This-
I mean,
this-
at least in the winter, I mean, you may get the rain we have, but most of the precipitation is gonna be in the form of snow.
You never know around here, that's the
You
whole
don't
thing,
know.
you can't
The
plan.
point is, we don't know in August either, but you see what I'm
Well, you're
saying?
gonna get a higher
I mean, it was
percentage of
50
snow than you would in July.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
I mean, the other day, we drove down to Sharon, and when we left our house, it was 34 degrees, On 495, my temperature gauge on the car said it was 64 degrees. And then 3 miles later, it started to just drop. There was like pockets of warming. I mean, this is New England, so that's why I think we have to be cautious. And if Carol doesn't have any experience with this,
The other thing,
we don't have any experience with it. And if
The other-
Carol doesn't have it, we rely on.
Well, I would say some of the experience I've had was not good experience, you know, I mean, Danforth Lane is the one I use as an example, really, when they were and that was one of the first subdivisions when I started here, they were putting that road in, and there was significant gullies that formed, you know, overnight, and they couldn't control the erosion. There was so much precipitation, they couldn't control it. Now, could it have happened in July? Maybe it could have, but it was much more difficult during the winter to get that gully established and stabilized.
And that's why we're having these, this is why
Right.
we're having these discussions now. I mean, this isn't the only site, we've got other sites, roads being constructed right now, all over the place.
Well, for
the best,
For something that's only gonna take a week, we usually have a full.
Well, the week is only,
that
it's
was
going to
only
be
for
more than
certain.
It's 2 weeks, sorry.
Well, it was, yeah, that was for a certain step. But the other thing is, once we, very quickly, we're gonna place the culvert.
Yeah.
That's gonna happen very quickly. And then you're gonna start putting in these blocks. You basically are creating a clean work area with the blocks.
Yeah, I have less concern with that other than whether or not there was flow and whether we had to do any kind of bypassing through that area.
But
than
that also
the- than
means
the
that
slope area.
if you can put off stumping and
Right,
grubbing this
right.
until the period where it's easier to control, you don't need to work on it.
I agree.
yet.
Right.
The main thing is to get the road through.
Correct.
So, Andy, I have one quick question. The material that's coming in to go between the
Yes.
blocks,
Structural.
that's structural.
Correct.
So the trucks are going to be going back and forth, because you need a lot of material there.
Yes.
How many feet of it?
How much? Yeah. Should there be any additional silt fence while those trucks are going back and forth up here,
They're gonna
so it
be-
doesn't go down into this area?
Yeah, it's gonna be a wall. So basically,
Because-
you're gonna have a concrete silt fence.
Okay. So
Right,
where
when
is
does
the
that get
concrete?
constructed? That gets, as you're putting in,
Prior
placing in,
to
bringing in
bringing
the
the
structure.
fill.
Is this the
Basically,
con-
you wanna bring the wall up this high. And
Okay.
like I was telling you basically wanna always have an extra few feet, so it's always like you do have curving, so.
Okay.
Because you don't want the material to spill over.
Can you see that on that other plan? that-
And by the way, the wall is concrete blocks, but there is fabric.
On the inside.
On the inside.
Yeah.
So
So it doesn't leach out.
Yes.
Is this the wall, is this the wall here?
The wall goes up to right here.
Right here?
So at this point.
So what are you going to do at this point over here? Because this is going to be
So at this point, that's
stumped
when
too.
we would
I
stump
mean-
and grub, and that's when you start bringing up this.
You gotta start at the low point.
You know, at
You
this
follow me?
point-
So you,
No, what I'm saying is the trucks come through with the fill,
Yes.
going in and out.
yes.
Not all the fill stays in those trucks.
Yeah, it pretty much does.
Well, depends what you call pretty much.
Well,
Well,
So
does.
what are you gonna do
Because
to
those are
protect
the same
this over
trucks that
here?
drive over the road.
Yeah, they have to drive
They're
it,
not-
so-
They're not dropping.
Well, I've seen like in construction sites, and there's just so much stuff, you know, that's dropped, and then the rain comes and it moves. Because it's not the same material that's gonna go in here, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So when you rebuild this and grade it, the material that went in here is the same material that goes in there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't understand that. But that was a different material than this.
No, the town requires structural. when
So
you're
you need
doing-
structural on this side
Yes.
so the road
Yep.
doesn't slip down?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
And that's what the
All right,
town
answer
engineers
my
out
question.
there, and they're gonna be taking compaction tests, they're gonna be taking sieve analysis.
I mean, and you're not just, by the way, you're not just, like, backing up and dumping a truck and then like loosely spreading it. This has to be done in, I think it's 8-inch lifts.
Okay.
So, and you're compacting it every time.
So when you
so
do
you're
this,
spreading
before
with
you
a-
do this,
Yes,
there's an escrow that has to be put up.
correct.
So have you submitted to us the cost of this?
Yes, that
Yes.
was originally submitted. We have
When
4
was it-
phases.
When was it submitted?
5 years ago.
So my question is, has the cost changed over 5 years? I mean, there's been inflation in building materials.
What is the cost?
This phase was 149,500, minus 10,000 that was already put in. Because it includes not just this wetland replication, but it includes 3 aura areas and 2 other detention basins.
So is that the escrow amount, or that's the total construction?
No,
That's
that's
the escrow amount. That includes all the multipliers.
Okay.
That's what gets put up.
So I guess my only question is, I would believe that the cost of doing that work is greater now than it was 5 years ago when that was submitted.
Well, we're talking about earthwork.
Yeah, it's really dirt. It's machine.
Yeah, but there's still machines use diesel fuel, diesel's more expensive, all that kind of stuff is more expensive.
Frankly, you're more than covered by the multiplier. I think what's the multiplier that's used?
Well, it's 1.5 on the road stuff,
That's
and
more
then
than that.
it's 3 times on the planting.
Right. Oh, wow.
But most of it's the road stuff, I would say.
Yes.
Well, he's got 3 ore areas, so not necessarily, he's got replication area, I think. I mean, I'd have to look at it again. I have it here, but I don't remember. It's broke, it could be even, how much is planting? There's a lot of planting.
The plants are very inexpensive. I mean,
Well, then it must be mostly road if it's 149,
That's
right?
that's an expensive culvert to put in. They're
Yes.
building a bridge.
Yeah.
And it has to hold the town's heaviest fire truck or something like that? Is that the code or something on what that has to withstand?
I'm not
Heavier
sure.
than a fire truck, yeah.
What do you think is, what's the height of the one at Houghton Farm? Is it like 15 or 11?
Yeah, probably 15 feet.
So if you want to get an idea, if you're not familiar with what Houghton Farm looks like, if you go down Sugar Road, take your first, well, after you go past Golden Run, take your first left, and there's a culvert that was put in 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and it's very similar construction.
It's just after the 2 houses, then
A little, I think it's gonna be higher. I mean, it's obvious, it's definitely gonna be higher.
yours is gonna be higher than theirs?
Yes.
Road construction, the materials, generally speaking, are a very small percentage of the cost. It's the machine time.
Right, machines are very expensive.
Yes, they have. They're very expensive.
And what do we get, 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 on the road?
1.5.
1 1/2. And this also includes detention basins that are not included in this?
Well, we just haven't talked about them tonight. It's included.
But I mean in the
phase 4.
escrow.
Yes, it's all
Yes.
included.
So what is the cost of doing, what is your estimate of the cost of doing the stream crossing, that bridge there?
I'd have to look at it. I don't remember, it's been a while since I looked at that.
5 years?
Well, no, we've looked at it, but
It's tiny print. I'll let you look at it. So while he's looking at that, can I just ask you guys, are you saying, or is there anybody who's now questioning whether they should be able to go forward doing it outside of the season, or are we trying to get to the point where we think that they are gonna be able to go forward?
Well, I think within the constraints that we've talked about, to try and minimize the exposure during that period,
Okay.
to move those items which didn't have to be done then.
Maria, do
further
you
out.
think of the same way?
Yeah.
And Jana, do you do that?
Yeah, I'm fine, as long as we have the proper oversight.
Okay, so
'Cause it's
we
new to
haven't
us.
reviewed the revised narrative that they
Yeah.
just revised today. So I think we need to have that submitted and give us some time to look at that.
But I'm also concerned with the amount of escrow.
Yeah, I get
'Cause
that. I
think
just figured while he's
costs
looking at
have
that, I would
gone up
ask these other questions.
Over 5 years, and
do you think you send us
this is
the
a big
electronic?
project, this one stream crossing.
Just get her an electronic copy of this.
So I can send this out to the
I
commission.
mean, Frank,
Just pass it.
it's basically 1.5 pages. I think it would only take us not very long to just read through it. I mean, while we're all here.
I don't think.
Well, we have a lot of other business I'd like to get to, but since
Yeah.
it's up to you guys. I prefer not to do it during the meeting. I'd like to look at the dates and look at my notes that I had and compare it and see if everything
Okay.
was answered.
Kind of. Could we leave it that, 'cause basically we've discussed what's already written here tonight as far as sequence. Can, if possible, between Carol and our side, that this gets finalized, reflecting what we've talked about?
And so what I would want to see is, because what we've talked about tonight that might not be in here, is the change in the grubbing of that area, right? Revising that to include, to state it in here.
I thought the way we're gonna leave it is that if we need to do it, we're gonna do it, but we're gonna try not to.
Oh, I didn't get that at all.
Maybe because this this
You
grading
mean
here.
try not to delay it, is that what you're
No,
saying?
no, we're gonna try to delay
Oh, okay.
doing it,
Okay.
but as you build this wall, at some point, as the wall goes up, you're gonna need to have the grading,
But we're gonna,
Holding back the
you're gonna
wall.
delay that until you're ready to put the walls in.
I'm gonna delay as long as we can, yes, until the wall.
Okay,
That's
so that
right.
should be reflected in your narrative, I guess is my point. If that's not clear in here, I'd like to have what we've talked about tonight reflected in here.
And typically, these are done, I mean, once we've done, you know, we kind of present these prior to the initial kickoff meeting. So, I mean, that would be incorporated, you know, prior to the initial site meeting to inspect the hay bales, correct?
Yeah, I think it sounds like you can do that faster than that too. I don't know
Yeah,
what
no.
date we're gonna set that up for, but, I mean, so it's Tuesday, if you get this out to us, I can get it out to the commission. If you want, I guess that's a question, do you wanna look at this revised narrative that they've submitted today?
Yes.
Okay. So then, if we get that tomorrow, we should be able to get back to you. When's a reasonable time for you to look at it? Do you need
Well, I
a
also want-
weekend, or do you need?
I also want to know about the
I know, we're getting to the escrow part, but,
You know, before we wrap up, because
right.
I have a concern the escrow may not be sufficient.
Okay. So how long do you think, though, if we get this out tomorrow, would you need the weekend, is my question, to have time to review it, or do you have time to,
Like 2
I don't know what
days,
people's
yeah.
schedules are like?
I have time.
I'd have time, maybe give me a few days, I would have time.
At least to the weekend.
but-
Till Friday, maybe?
No, I need to the weekend.
Are you through the weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we would, so that would give you time to revise it tomorrow and get it out,
Yeah,
I can get it out to them.
Yeah, there's not much to revise.
Right. Well, hopefully.
Just that growth.
That's the only thing I think of.
So it includes potentially using wood chipping on the other sides, it includes, you've talked about the diversion pipe, did you say anything more of that in here? You've changed some of
It's in
the
here.
stabilizing dates or explained how that's gonna be done, and the wetland,
I think,
the wetland, the swales, the detention basin, all that stuff's been added.
I believe that the way we talked about it tonight, is the way it's written in here already,
Okay.
except for,
And the blanket's already in there too?
yes.
Except for the grubbing issue, though.
I mean, that's the only, I mean, that's why I know, suggested is, it's basically, what we've discussed tonight is right here.
Okay.
I just thought maybe it'd be easier, just to spend 10 minutes and it'd be done.
Sometimes we like to read it and think about it, because a lot of this stuff, it's the first time that we've dealt with it.
Right, no, well,
So-
it's,
We might think
Up
about
to
it and
you.
come up with more questions, that's why we like the time. We may not, Andy, but
We
we
still
might.
have resolved, we got Fred looking at those drawings anyway, so.
Yeah, the planning board's meeting
Whatever you
tomorrow
wanna
night,
do.
so we're gonna find out whether they're gonna have him do that. Okay, so back to the escrow then.
Right.
Were you able to figure out anything, or is it?
stop looking at it. I mean, if your figure is correct, I mean, what it says here is prior to commencing work, we have to give you $149,500. Keep in mind that the purpose of the escrow is not to build the road.
Right.
If I don't build the road, the money you need is to stabilize the area. $149,000.
The planning board has its surety,
significant.
is that also the planning board, or they have surety also on it, right?
Ours is really, in the case of the crossing, is to deal with getting it out if the road's not gonna go forward.
Right.
And
to-
stabilizing
it's
it
to
and
button it up.
replanting it, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
so.
It's not to
I
button
guess-
it up, it's
Well,
to.
no, he's got some, in his case, some of it was to button up, that was some of the way
Well,
we
it
discussed
depends what you
it.
call button up, but ours would be to put it back in the state it was before if
Right.
it's not going through.
Right.
Not just, button up to me just sort of stabilizes
Well,
everything.
it's kind of, it's always a question as to what stage things are at. Is it gonna be, if Andy wasn't able to complete it, is it causing an impact on the wetland? Those things we'd need to take care of immediately, obviously, and the money needs to be there for that. as well as then what's gonna happen to it. Is it gonna continue, or is it gonna be coming out, you know? So it's never, that's why it's sort of in there as a larger amount, because we never know what stage we're gonna be at.
Right,
But you-
because there's lots created on the other side, I mean, I guess is the point. So I mean, say there was ever an issue where a developer, you know, there was an issue, you gotta stabilize it, but eventually, I mean, somebody's gonna finish the road. You know, so it's not like.
Right, at what point and how long,
when,
and
how
what needs to
long?
be done.
Right, so I'm just saying, you know, so
I
you-
mean, when they're not working, they don't pay their taxes for a bunch of years either, so, you know, that's why we have the escrow.
Right.
In case
But I-
we want to take action,
Right.
we have the funds available to us.
But I'm trying to point out that when you talk about the escrow needs to be higher because the cost of the work is higher, the Concom is not really, my understanding, because, and again, this has been done a long time ago, but the planning board, before they release lots to me so that I can sell,
Yeah.
they get a bond from me that is to finish the work.
Was it 8,000 a lot?
Well, no.
Has this been bonded, this road
Let
crossing?
me, because what they're interested, they don't wanna have home buyers living there, and then the road doesn't get 100% done.
Yeah.
That is a different concern than the Concom. The Concom, I believe, and the basis for this money, it's not to build the road, it's really that if we stopped working, it's really, I'm gonna use the term button things up. You're saying it's more than button up, I agree. It's basically to get the thing back in a natural state that's reasonable. $150,000 just to do that, that's a lot of money.
All I can tell you,
Because
Andy,
it's not relating to road work or things like that.
Andy, you might have some thought about how this was originally done. I don't know, I'm not arguing that. But we treat everybody the same.
Yes.
So everybody that comes in, we require 1.5 times for the road work and 3 times for the mitigation, the plants and the soils and things of that nature. So we don't go to somebody and say, oh, well, this is only so much, so you don't have to give us as much. Everybody,
Well, that's how this works.
everybody comes in and gives us a construction estimate, and then we put the 1.5 or the 3 times to it, end of the story, and then the
But
certain
this was
times-
done a little differently. This was done in a phased approach, one.
Yeah.
And it was such a big amount that it was broken down in stages. So it was broken down very precisely, and so it wasn't just one number kind of given out
Right,
in
but
this
what was
case.
the numbers were
Well, that's
put
there, I'd
together a
have to
number
look
of
at
years
them,
ago.
yeah, they
That's
were,
what
and
I'm
I don't
saying.
disagree.
But the point
And
Carol's
so,
making too is, it was done with the idea that it's gonna be phased. I mean, they didn't come up
Right.
with that, I mean, they factor in inflation, they factor in different
Did
things.
they factor in all this time? I don't think they factored in this amount of time.
I think-
well, a subdivision has 8 years really to typically be constructed, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's not, for a normal size well, it depends on what, there's no normal anymore, I guess. I mean, that's generally what the subdivision law
That's
allows,
what
right,
it
8
says,
years.
that's right.
So I mean, I think it's considered to some degree, and I don't know, I can't remember distinctly that we considered inflation, but I do think that we did consider that this project was gonna be phased, and I do think we considered this project broken out in a way that's a little different than we sometimes do just a single-family house lot or common driveway or something. And I guess what I would just say is, since it's hard to look at the numbers right now, since you're gonna
Actually,
get back to us.
I
Okay.
figured it
I was
out.
gonna say, maybe you could
The
email
cost
it
was
to us.
$84,500 for the items that are listed. So that's why the bond is $149,500.
But-
But again, the Concom, this bond budget, it's not to build the road. That's not, that's not your, that's not your job. The planning board is concerned with, if I have sold the lot to a homeowner, they need the road done 100%.
Now, my concern is with the wetlands,
No, I understand.
all right? And the way that we run it is, for the amount for crossing the wetlands, it's 1.5 times the cost. Just so we have enough, we don't have to worry. And for mitigation,
Yeah.
it's 3 times. So you're telling me that the cost of the road is 89?
No.
And the culvert?
All I,
What he has in here is for construction of detention basin berms, swales, labor, aura mitigation, wetland replication, and so that's one chunk, and he's got some amounts here for that. And then he's got more money in earthwork, buttoning up, and he's got
Yeah.
more money in for stabilizing disturbed areas. He's got then money in, again, another spot for other wetland replication. And then he's
Can I
got
take a
mon-
look at
yeah,
it?
then he's got, and just to say, I've highlighted some of the places where the money is.
Okay.
Temporary VMPs, including erosion control blankets on steep slopes, you know, I mean, so there's money in for that. And stockpile, no, there's no money on the stockpile. But so, it's in different places, and it's been broken down in different ways than some, like, you know, some contractors give us all one amount. You know, we've said that we want it broken down more. This one's pretty well broken down.
Mhm.
So is the 149 really for the culvert area?
No, it's for multiple, it's many
It's for
things.
the whole-
It's for the work in phase 4, it's for the erosion
It's for
control,
everything, not
it's
just
for
the-
the swale construction, it's for the detention
Okay.
basins.
How much did the culvert cost at Houghton Farm?
I don't know.
In orders of magnitude, that's a very large amount. I know roughly they built that whole road for not double, but a little more than double that amount. So that's a pretty conservative figure, I think. And obviously, there's a lot more wall here.
Well, there's
and
other
more
retaining
stuff
wall
added.
and stuff
There's
in,
other-
on here too.
yeah.
You know, there's retaining walls around the swales, there's,
So I see some of the numbers are multiplied by 1.5.
which is the
And then some
road.
of the numbers are multiplied by 3.
Yeah, which is the
But
plantings.
if you do the total cost, the final number only comes out at, let's see, 1.5 would be another 42,000, be 126. So it seems to be that they have 3 times and 1.5 is
Yeah.
correct. So my only question is, and this was done when? When was this estimate done?
I don't know, is it on the top or on this? It's recorded with the order of conditions. So the order of conditions was
Is
issued.
it not dated? Gotta have a date, I always get it.
It might be, it's just the
Top left?
top left, 07.
Almost said.
September 17th, 07. So if this is planned to be 8 years, if that's what it was planned, and that was taken
Well, I'm
into
not saying it was
consideration.
planned that way, I'm just saying a subdivision can be built out over 8 years as a typical allowance, so I don't remember if that was,
So I guess my
So
question
that-
is, and I'm open to answers,
yeah,
is if something takes 8 years and the cost goes up,
yeah.
do we require more later on? Do we require new estimates, or do we just go with what we did 8 years ago? On this case,
In this case,
In this case-
I can't say for this
in this
case,
case,
I thought we
6.5
talked about
years
it,
ago,
I thought we
5
talked about it on another
6.5
project
years ago.
at some point that,
not with me.
no, I thought recently we talked about it, not necessarily in the length of time, but, you know, if there was more work or something changed, you know, people had to come back.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad question, I don't know that, I think the way you've asked it is to put the onus on them to come back and say, we've looked at the numbers again,
Yeah.
and it's either fine, it's still, you know, as you said, equipment may be costing more, or maybe it's, you know, other things have gone down, or it's not, you know, and just double check the numbers.
Does that include the other basin? I guess it's 9.
We took, he already, so 10,000 was already submitted for 9B. And that's that basin and whatever ore was around
Yeah,
that.
so I was gonna say.
So it's really 139.5 that's due to start this project, or phase. But I don't think it's wrong to ask him that, I mean, in
I
the
would like
past,
to
so I
know.
think, you
I don't
know.
see how the cost hasn't gone up.
So take a look at the numbers when you send us this material, see if there's something that you can justify it in some way, or that you've looked at it again and you think it
And
was
when does
built in, and.
when does he get this money back?
It's on that. The release of the schedule of the release.
It's similar to any other project, you know, it's, The planting is, after 1 year of monitoring and success, they submit the report.
But I believe a lot of this has to do with the construction of the culvert.
So basically, once it's in,
Yeah, so some of it
as-bilt's
can.
provided
right,
to you
as-
guys.
Right,
and
as-built.
we basically would do a letter saying that the work's been done, here's the plan, and we request release. And on this one, usually something comes in where there's an engineer, the town will already have done all their inspections, you'll have all their reports,
Right.
stating that it's been completed in accordance with it, whether, something was not.
That's what I'm looking at now. So timeframe, Brandon, how long would this be before you'd come back with that as-built? Let's say you started day one, how long are we talking about?
How long do you think it'll take you to finish the road from here to here? I mean, obviously, you're probably not gonna have
Well,
it
again,
paved, or when would you want to come back to get some money? Because you could not have it quite paved and
I guess I'm
get
not.
some of it back.
Once the first row of blocks, you're starting at the low point, so you're not gonna have to build the entire thing to get to the point where,
I mean, if we go by this, I mean, we're saying November.
this is the entire phase 4. This construction sequence, is for the entire phase 4. However, there is a separate section just for the crossing. But I mean, as far as this relates to, this is just a piece of phase 4.
Right.
But we didn't, so in total, this deals with the entire, but the sequence of work is laid out very specifically for this section because
So
that's
how long does it take before we have an as-built?
as,
Probably within a year, I would think.
A year?
we typically as-built.
If you're looking at financial, it's gonna be this fiscal year, so.
We typically as-build almost as we go, because it's not something we really do just because we have to. We do it to make sure that the work we're doing was right.
And to get your money back.
More important than getting the money back is to make sure that we actually put things in the right place. Do you follow what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't do me any good
I hear
to
what
build a
you're saying.
road and have my sewer line tilting the wrong way. So before I pave the road, I want my as-built done. So, I mean, a good contractor does it not because he has to, because you want to make sure your work's done properly before you cover it up. And a good developer wants it done as you go because you're paying the contractor, right, for the work.
Yeah.
And for the work to be done properly. If you pay out 100% of a contract, and then you do your as-built simply because the town requires it, and then you find out that it was, let's say horizontally, the road's off by 4 feet, what? Who's gonna pay to rebuild that road again? The developer. So you don't, I do the as-built, the reason why they're
So you're telling us
as-built,
you don't do an as-built in the whole project, you do as-built on the different steps?
I as-built as I go.
So the as-built that comes to us to get your money back, when does that happen? Is it,
What
do we
what are
give
you-
back a little?
what are you trying to get at? I'm not sure. Are you trying to get at because you want to see the
I
as-built
want to see
sooner,
what,
or?
I believe that the cost has gone up,
Yeah,
and the 149,000 wouldn't be sufficient.
okay.
But again, if we're dealing with a shorter time frame to get this done, and he's gonna get the money back at that time, then I don't feel as strongly about asking for more money. So if you're gonna tell me it's gonna take a year, I think it's gonna cost more money, but if you're gonna do as-built and we're giving money back as he does it, then it's less of a risk for the commission. So maybe we just, if we feel there's a risk, we just give the money back a little slower. So that's why I'm trying to get the time, so he doesn't, so I don't have to ask him to come up with more money. I don't want to come up with more money if we don't need it. But I want to make sure that we don't need that money for our security. Now, everybody that comes in front of us tells us they do wonderful work, and everything's going to be done on
You know what?
time, and we
Everybody
don't have
tells
to
me the
worry,
same thing.
and just go ahead with it. And so we can't do that. And what we've learned in doing this, in the short time I've been on the commission, which is like 4 years, is that most people come in and what they promise they do. But there's people that come in and then promise and don't do it, and it becomes our problem and causes us headaches. So since I've been in the commission, I've been asking that everything be done right in the first place, so we don't get stuck with the problems, because we're volunteers, we don't get paid for this, Andy. And so we're giving our time, so we don't need, extra aggravation.
Neither do I.
We don't want to slow you down, but we have to protect our end, and what
You'd be
happens
a good
is...
lender. I'm a lender too,
Okay.
in addition. So,
But anyway,
everything you're talking about is sounds like...
So we want to protect,
True.
we want to protect the town, and we want to protect the resources. That's all we're trying to do. And because if someone comes in and we believe they're good, and someone else comes in and we don't believe they're good, it's a gut feeling, and he sees we treated somebody else differently, we end up in court. We already had one person sue us over a project like this. They eventually gave in, and it was summary judgment, but it was a real problem for everybody, and so we have to treat everybody the same. So if someone comes in
Except
and
for
asks us
one
for
thing.
one thing,
Except-
it has to be the same for everybody.
Except for one huge difference.
Okay.
That bond was already agreed to. So this is not, we're not here to set the bond amount. In my opinion, that bond amount, I went through a 10-year approval process. A long, everybody looked at things very, very carefully during that process. So when you're talking about setting a bond amount with somebody that comes in, you're not setting the bond amount with me. Mine was already set. There was already a board that took a very, very careful look at everything, and that was what was agreed to.
Well, you might be 100% correct. I
So-
don't know whether
so
it's correct.
with respect to
but
you-
you might be 100% correct. I just know when it comes to bonds that I've been involved in, other boards don't set the bonds. It's been the commission that set the bond.
That's
No, I think that's what he means. It was another, it was the commission 8 years ago.
It was the commission at the time.
Right.
That's what I think.
This is the bond amount. I'm not, I'm not in here to set the bond amount. The bond amount was already set.
But usually there's an expectation it's done in a certain amount of time.
But that's why
what
you
I'm
have
asking.
1.5 times. You already have 50% more than what it was
I
estimated
think
to
this, the
cost.
other thing with
You
this
know,
project.
I'm not trying, I'm just,
I think the other thing with
I'm
this,
just
the time of development that we've been in is that, there's, and it hasn't necessarily really affected Andy, but it did to some degree. There's the slowdown. There was a period of time that.
didn't if you-
All right, well, I guess it did. But you're making up. It seems like now you got a lot of the houses, sold. But the and so normally we also have the developer coming in and asking for the extension permits, and that's also a period of time which we actually started in September last year before the extension permit period had been granted, extended by the governor, where we can talk about other things. The commission doesn't have to extend the permit when certain things have changed. And that sometimes can, give the commission the authority to ask these questions again at this point, at that point. But this permit, it doesn't expire for another year, I think September of 2014,
Yeah,
or
2014,
something like that.
yeah. Later this year,
September,
later this
December,
year.
something like that. So I think
Well,
Andy's
I thought
right in
Andy-
that the number has been
Forgive me
set,
if
but.
I'm confused, but I thought Andy came in and asked this to be extended. We had a whole discussion on extending it.
yes.
But then it was determined that the
Carol and I had
Permit
discussed it
Extension
about-
Act had been.
It's
had
already been extended, so we were
extended.
gonna wait until essentially next summer to go for the next,
Well, we're not gonna wait till they,
right, but it's, I think it's next fall is when it comes up.
Yeah.
yeah.
So so what you're saying to me, Carol, is that this has been agreed to, and we're gonna stay with the 149,000
I think you
for
pretty
the
much
bond,
have to, yeah.
unless he has to extend the permit.
Well, if he has to extend the permit, then we just revisit the questions. We don't necessarily say that the amounts are wrong or not. What you have to look at when, there's a whole criteria that you look at when somebody wants to extend it. It's not usually financially related so much, but whether or not things have changed enough, whether there's change in the delineation, whether there's a change in the scope of the work, or whether there's a change in the characteristics of the mostly related to, the wetlands, which is what you'd be concerned about.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things, then you would say, we're either going to extend it or we're not going to extend it. If you weren't going to extend it, you'd have an opportunity to revisit, however else you're going to, if they're going to have to refile.
Certainly, it would be clearer if when we established or agreed upon an escrow amount, we also agreed on a time frame
Exactly.
for which it were valid. We haven't done that. It might be interesting to do it going forward on the next one, but it isn't as clear.
Yeah, I think that it's typically thought that the permit, the timeframe that the permit's gonna be valid, you know, which again is typically 3 years under the orders of conditions. And then under like the subdivision, it's 8, you know, it's 8 years. So I think that's a good point, you know, and it's fine to think about that in the future on a larger project and to say, but we may have done that in this case.
Yeah, I do want some of these. I mean,
Yeah.
that in part is where the multiplier comes in, but also I know other times we've requested that the bond be discussed when they go to start work.
Right.
Instead of prior to closing, so that the
Right, it's
amount
gonna be
is
closer
actually
to the-
valid
yeah.
because it's
Right.
close to when they start work. So that's typically how we've done it. I mean, it's a
I
little
think,
different
I think
for
we've done it,
subdivision,
we've done
you
it a
know.
little different in different cases, depending on when somebody thought they were gonna get started, what they had for information, if the thing was gonna, if the project was going to be sold to somebody else, if they weren't gonna, you know, if they were just getting the permitting.
Can I just see the estimate?
I don't have it anymore, so
Oh,
this is,
oh.
but I'd like to get my, other plan back and my pen.
Especially the pen.
Carol, could we have a vote?
On what?
Issue on getting permission to move forward?
I think we're waiting to
No,
review
we're
the
not gonna vote to
narrative.
review the narrative
Okay.
and everything sort of that.
Well, are you gonna vote on that, or are you gonna give me your opinion on
Right,
it?
that was
Because we're not
our-
gonna meet till the 21st, so I guess we need to know
I
that.
guess, once we see it, then, and have a chance to review it, then we can write to you and tell you what we think.
Whether you wanna have it come back, or
There's
whether
a
you're,
vote on
okay.
whether we're
Okay.
fine with it.
Okay. Alan's falling asleep, he's ready to go.
I'm not sure.
Well,
I thought we were leaving
agreed
this, that we, I don't know.
What we were hoping to do was to
We were gonna
have you
look at it
vote,
through the weekend is what I
that we could
thought,
do
in
this,
hopes that-
you would,
But I
yeah.
thought in concept that the board was, forget the word, you asked what the board thought.
Right.
Right, which I
Yeah,
forget
we
what
were-
that
there was a
Whether
cons-
we're gonna allow
a
you to go.
consensus.
Oh,
A
so,
cons-
all right, so maybe
yeah.
you're asking, are you asking, Ellen, then, or do you wanna vote from the commission
That-
that says
consensus that we would have the right to move forward, subject to your
Finalizing this
review
document.
and review of the final
Constructions.
construction
Right,
schedule.
I think that would be fine.
I don't feel comfortable
Okay.
voting tonight, because I haven't read all this. I just got it yesterday. So, right now, I'm not uncomfortable, but I want to look everything over for a couple days.
You
and
got
see
the
if I have
narrative
additional
before.
questions.
The revised narrative, we haven't even received. We were supposed to meet on the 17th, and I sent out the narrative for that meeting. But we didn't meet, and
Right,
I had
snowstorm.
comments and questions, which then Alan asked me if I had any comments and questions, and so I hadn't heard from anybody, so I sent in him my comments and questions like Friday, I think. And then they just worked on a revised one today. So I get what you're saying, you want to read through this material.
This is, a lot of it's new to me, it's
Okay.
complicated. I would feel more comfortable in a couple days to look at it. I don't have any questions, additional questions now.
Can you, I guess are you saying that we're gonna have to come back for another meeting?
No, I didn't
So-
say that.
Oh.
I said I want to read it and review it,
But how,
and then make up
Yeah.
my mind
If
whether I
we-
need to come back for another
But
meeting or
if
not.
we don't vote, you know, subject to our review of this, if we don't,
then we do have to come back.
then
to
do
it.
we have to, do they have to come back and we vote in 2 weeks?
I don't-
Or-
I don't wanna make stupid, but yeah, what are we voting on? I mean,
Yeah.
because, I mean, the construction sequence is subject to review, but we've never really voted on those. I mean, the only thing we're actually.
We're voting on
requesting
whether
is
you can
whether
do
or
this
not
in
we
the,
can move forward.
in the
Yeah.
other season, that's what we're
So
voting
you're
That's
on.
right,
saying,
exactly.
you can't make that, I mean, I think the questions are on the sequencing, correct?
No, the questions are, my question, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. My question is that this is not something we've done before. Carol said she hasn't done it before. Things seem to be in order. He answered a lot of my questions, but I want a little time to look at it and think it over before I vote, because it's something that's abnormal for us. It's the first time we've done it.
Does it require a vote? Will we have to vote in 2 weeks? if we-
Well, personally, I think it should be done by a vote at some point, because it's the plan right now, the order says, you know, right now that the work is only done in July and October. So if you're gonna make that change, to me, it's a significant enough change, doing it in January, that it would be better to have it.
I'm just concerned
you
that
know,
we're gonna make things worse for ourselves the longer we delay it, because then we get closer to spring and more
mean, could you-
warmer conditions. If it gets into March.
Could I suggest maybe,
I sort of like the suggestion of voting now, subject to our review of,
subject to this being
Yes,
finalized
yeah.
to an acceptable?
Because frankly, there's
Does
very
that
little that has to be
constitute a motion?
changed.
yeah.
Well,
And I see.
so my problem is not on saying that this is, you know, that we don't have a problem with the sequence. I don't understand this enough to vote on whether it's acceptable to do this in the middle of the winter. There was a reason to do it under certain weather conditions. And it's
I
been brought in
understand that,
front of
but
us
we've been discussing-
saying that this is why they can do it.
Right.
And I don't feel confident
Bob,
to say that
I know.
they're correct or
I
not
understand,
correct.
but we've been thinking about this, we've had a lot of time to think about this, and I feel that if we continue to delay it, it's,
Would it be, excuse me,
It's gonna get to
would it be
spring.
proper to make a motion at this point and then call for discussion to see if this is in fact how we wanted to proceed?
Yes.
what do you mean?
Yes.
Okay, Jimmy.
Well, once you have a
Go ahead.
motion, you have to have a vote.
Yeah, so then you find out whether or not it's gonna proceed now or not.
Mhm.
Maybe that's one way to do it.
You mean, subject to our review of that?
Absolutely, to the final review.
Well, it depends on how the motion's said, so it
That's
depends
right.
on how you say it.
So are you making a motion or not?
See, I don't understand all the issues so far. That's why I'm having trouble.
So what am I
And
making
my
a motion
thought
for?
that
That's
Just
discussion.
make a motion
If you
for-
feel that you have all the issues, you understand all the issues, and you feel comfortable, it's different. I don't feel comfortable, because I'm not sure if I understand all the issues.
Well, I think what Janet's
Right,
saying
okay,
is
but
she
Bob,
gets the
you
issues.
can
but-
still, we could vote now, subject to our review of that, and you could still, you know,
But he's
Then how do
saying
you
he's
have
not
another
sure he
vote?
wants to approve that
I-
yet. He wants to review, he's not sure he's ready to approve moving forward with the construction in this winter outside the timeframe.
I'm leaning towards it,
Oh.
but I don't understand
At
all
all.
the questions or all the ramifications, because this is something new for me, and Carol said it's also new for her. So I don't have a comfortable
but, so
feeling.
just in a general sense of whether it's okay to do.
To
the
do
work
it
that-
at this time of
All
year.
right, all right, but we've been talking about this for what, a month now? If you're just thinking about it in a general sense, I don't feel like it's fair to delay further, because we have had plenty of time to think about
This is the
in
first time I've
general.
talked about this.
Oh, you weren't here
About
at the-
doing this discussion. It's my first time about doing this in the winter. If you discussed it at a meeting
I didn't know.
I wasn't at,
Maybe it was a meeting you weren't at, because we
It could
definitely
be
brought
a
this up
site
before.
Back in November.
We've been in front of this board before with this
Yes, we
issue.
have.
Well, we started with a site walk and then we had a
Yeah.
meeting.
That's
Yeah.
right. This is not the first time we've addressed this. It's possible that you were not at the meeting.
it could be.
Yeah.
I don't know what meeting it
Definitely
was.
before the
Yep.
holidays.
Yep.
Discuss this at least once.
Yes. And then we tried again on the 17th, but
Yeah,
it
it
snowed
was-
out that
yeah,
night.
yeah.
That's right.
So, yeah, we did miss a meeting.
We missed a meeting. I think we were here on the 3rd to discuss it, and I don't think you were
It could be.
here.
Carol will look and
So
see.
you actually came before that.
It might have been before that.
November,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we've been talking about.
Keep
this
in
for a while.
mind one thing,
Mhm.
this work is already approved. The only thing we're talking about is
The time of year.
the time of year.
That's what I'm talking, that's something I'm talking about at the time of year.
Yeah,
That's-
that's right.
I'm not
That's
talking
what
about
I
anything
really
else
do think
but the
we've
time of
addressed
Time
the
year.
issues.
continues to pass, the time of year continues to change. January is better than.
It would be great to get this going.
Yeah.
It really
But
would.
my question is, January may not be a good time either. I don't know enough to vote on that, that's all I'm
Okay,
saying.
you were here, but we did discuss, this is an ongoing issue.
To make a motion.
So to vote on.
If
what's
you
the
want to make a
motion?
motion, it seems like,
We can
Okay.
make the motion and then
Then-
have a discussion.
well, we've
which
kind of
is-
already had the discussion.
Okay,
All right,
so
I'd like to
should
make
be
a
short.
motion that we vote on, I don't know how to word this.
Is it amending the order of conditions, making a motion to amend the order of conditions?
No,
So is
because
this-
if we're going through an amendment, then
Okay.
you have to do a whole, the amendment process is a public hearing, which this isn't.
Right,
don't want
right.
to do that.
It's a motion to allow us
Allow-
to proceed, subject to approval.
Carol's final
Okay,
approval.
so
Right,
it's
right.
a motion
So what we're
to
asking you to do is
vote.
to cede that responsibility to Carol to give us the final approval once she's canvassed the board and make sure everybody's comfortable with the final
Okay.
revision.
So is the, making a motion to vote on whether or not it's okay to do the work in winter, subject to our review, our in approval of those changes.
Well,
Did I say this?
the only thing I would
Yeah. Yeah.
suggest you consider changing
Yeah,
is if when you say your
yeah.
approval of this would mean you'd have to have another
Might
meeting.
be Carol's approval.
I would say it should be.
In other words, we would ask you to cede that responsibility to
Right,
Carol
I see.
to,
That she won't approve it until you guys have gotten back
Until you
to
guys
it with
have-
your comments.
right.
Okay,
But-
so
so that we can
do
work
this
with
again
her.
now. I'd like to make a motion that we vote on whether or not it's okay for this work to proceed in winter, subject to Carol's approval of the final
Narrative,
narrative.
construction narrative.
right.
Yes. I'm guessing no one's gonna second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
No, I'm agreeing to a vote. I think we've had enough discussion.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, who was that, Jim or Brian, sorry? Jim, you have a second?
Jim
I
second.
think I seconded
Yeah.
it first.
Okay.
So you second.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. And I want to explain why I'm against it. Not that I think it's wrong. I don't understand the issues, and I haven't had time to get up to speed whether this is a good or bad idea. And I would have liked a couple more days.
Thank you.
Okay. So, you'll get us the material, and we'll hopefully have some answer by the beginning of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Happy healthy New Year.
Same to
So I
you.
need my pen back and my plan.
I don't know, this pen, is this it?
Yeah.
I don't have a license.
And this is your Derby and Company.
And then I had, it was the plan,
Derby
the
Company?
profile.
Mark
the,
Derby.
It might have gotten mixed into.
And I think I asked you, you're not really.
That's from my dad.
Oh, that's right. They're financial planners.
I built a condominium for
Mark Derby's his name.
Dean Barabee,
So they compete with Joe.
1981.
Yeah, I guess.
Accident.
Yeah, that's funny.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
There's a pocket of us.
Yeah.
Have
a nice.
Yeah, I got you. Well, I saw you.
Yeah? Try to put the pen back in the.
Oh, I was like,
No, but the time you have to worry. is when I take this out.
very tough.
And,
Nitroglycerin.
What is that?
Just in case.
thank you.
Okay, right. Yes, please do. Sorry I didn't get you up there sooner. The tables aren't big enough.
Take one if that doesn't work.
just a
Take another one if that doesn't work, call
But it's
911.
hard to be a spectator in the back.
Oh, you still have
It's hard to see.
That's a direct quote. It doesn't mean it's.
Here's our audience.
So, the question to me is not a public meeting, is it?
I mean, this is a public meeting, it's not a public hearing.
Public
Yeah,
What helps
yeah,
is
so you don't have
getting-
to have any legal notice.
Okay, well, consider that 13 years ago.
So you wanna do that?
So let's do Slater 120 Meadow Road, request for certificate of compliance. And Carol, have you been out to see the work?
Yes, I was out. We have, let me just grab it out of the file. So this project was a septic upgrade. And they were also adding on 2 decks so that they could finish the barn and provide, I guess there's doors or something at the top of the site, at the top of the building, so they need to have
They
a
were
porch
building-
around it or something.
They were building,
Steps down.
an apartment up
Yeah. So we've received a letter from the engineers. This is the as-built. Engineer sort of says to satisfy the condition 40 of the order. Let's see. The work was done on May 17th. They inspected the proposed work and found that it appeared to be in general accordance with the requirements of the order and the reference design plans. And the work was to install the new septic and construction of 2 wood decks attached to the existing building. So all of that part's been done, it's all stabilized. He's got the gravel road comes back in and around. And then the one thing that the commission had been also waiting for was to cut up and remove the logs and the brush and some material that had been over here. And that took him longer to get to,
There was
but
a
it's
lot
now
of
done.
All that material was gone?
Well, the material that was in the pile's all gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he also had some
Stuff in the pond?
rubbish in the pond.
No, there's no rubbish that I saw. in the
And he
pond.
also, didn't he have some containers there with stuff in it? Is that gone too? He had two, you know, like those shipping containers they put on ships in the backs of trailer
Yes,
trucks?
well, that was near the brush pile.
That was over
I
here.
don't know if that was in
That
the
was over
order.
here, that was gone, isn't it? Doesn't, I don't see it.
We had, the
logs
order
were
said that the
there.
brush pile, including logs, trees, tree debris, shall be moved to a location outside the adjacent upland resource area within 2 weeks. And he had trouble moving the stuff, so he said, I'll just get rid of, I'll just cut it up and then get rid of it. I don't think we had anything about the,
Well, it seems to be gone
Containers.
according to this picture, because he wrote, where's his house? Is his house up here? Or his house up here? And his house is up here, and the hill goes up over here, his house would be.
his house is up on the top of the hill.
Yeah, so the containers
existing
are
house.
gone.
Yeah,
They're gone.
okay. All right, I don't know that we had the containers in the order, but I think all the work has been done satisfactorily, so my recommendation was to issue the certificate of compliance.
So we make a
Both
motion.
under the Wetlands Act and under the bylaw. And there was a continuing condition that the applicant maintain the vegetation over the top of the soil absorption system with regular mowing to prohibit woody growth on the system.
So you want me to make a motion?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance, Slater, 120 Meadow Road, under the Wetlands Protection Law and the bylaw, Town of Bolton bylaw. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
You're not a voting member now.
Yeah.
All right.
Um,
Then we have one on Wilder Road.
Wait, one sec, I need to sign this one. Second, by chance.
Oh, it's okay to yawn now, right?
Can I ask a quick question on the building? Did anybody research, because Carol didn't seem to know,
The
what-
winter issue?
the winter issue?
Yes,
That was my concern.
I tried to, yeah, I forgot that you weren't there. I tried to, so, what I found out was that, in general, to do forestry crossings, they actually recommend doing it in winter during frozen conditions, because that's better than any other time of year. I never understood why, but when they're talking about crossings that are not related to forestry, they say in the summer dry months. I couldn't find anything about why, for one purpose, it's recommended in winter, and another purpose, it's recommended that they do it in late summer.
Well, the purposes would be very different.
Well, both of
Because-
them we're talking about permanent crossings and large crossings. I looked into that, and it almost seemed like it was tradition within forestry that they do that work in winter, and tradition that they do it in late summer. Either way, I think those are
Was
the
it
two
stream
best.
crossings in forestry?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that, those are the two best times, either late summer when it's dry or during frozen conditions. I'm not sure that it really, I'm not sure that.
The crossing part wasn't the part that bothered me as much as the slope.
The slope.
You
which
know,
is
and
not-
with forestry, you may not have as many, you're not building the road to that same level, you're not building it up as
Well,
much.
it
I mean,
depends on the
well, I think
project,
they
though.
go,
I did try to look up, large permanent crossings in forestry, and that's what I found.
Okay.
I don't know.
So that's one thing I
I
wanted
think,
to look at.
What I came to the conclusion of is that it's the two best times of year would be late summer when it's dry, or during frozen conditions.
Right. So I guess if I wasn't involved in that meeting and I had read the notes, I should have really recused myself from that discussion.
it wasn't a public hearing.
Okay.
It was a discussion whether we wanted to allow it or not to allow it. And until they had the further discussion, I wasn't sure I would be supporting of it either, so
I think that for me, from what they described, it was a shorter project than I originally thought. So the amount of time, that they'd be spending on this crossing. I envisioned it for some reason being much longer, and if you start in mid or late January, going into March on that, that could be a problem.
We'll see how quick it happens.
Yeah, maybe we'll go into it, I don't know.
And I think,
But all the
again,
more reason to not delay.
yeah,
Yes.
not doing the cutting, not doing the grubbing goes a long way with me on the slope part, and then taking extra precautions.
Right, and all that, right, that.
And I think, I think Bob, or somebody said it, I mean, we're gonna have to be out there,
Yeah,
because it doesn't happen if you're not.
exactly, no,
And the moment you're not there, somebody's not maintaining the erosion control, and then you get the storm, and you may still get a storm, you may have some problems,
So
but
I
at
sort of
least.
felt like if they're going to do it in winter at all, it ought to be as soon as possible.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, it's still winter.
Yeah, well, it's still winter.
All right, so Wilder Road, I received a letter from Ducharme Dillis requesting a certificate of compliance for the common driveway work, and I know some of you had been out there this fall. They said on behalf of their clients, which was the residents of the common driveway, they have removed the silt fencing from the site. The swale has been constructed, the swales have been completed at the locations marked on the plan, which is at station 800 and 1200, and inspected the reworking of the other two swales, and they certify the construction of them. That the driveway has been regraded to the appropriate crowns and cross slopes to address drainage issues, and it was rebuilt at certain sections, 800, 1200, 1600, and 1800. And they also inspected the regrading of the road that had been performed by others, and they certified that it meets the requirements of the plan. That the bridge and the guardrail at station 1700 has been repaired, and that the apron, which was put up at the top at Wilder Road before the driveway, wasn't pavement as it had been proposed in the plan, but it's been functioning, and that's how they would like to keep it without the pavement apron. So all the work that they needed to finish has been completed, and all the work that had been done by the previous contractor has been certified. I haven't been out there to check it, so I don't know.
I would like you to check it because
Okay.
it's not an uncomplicated situation.
Right, well, the thing is, I wasn't out there when you guys had the site visit, so I'd actually like to do it with somebody who did the site visit.
Okay,
because
I'll go with you.
Okay. All right.
Not a cold day like today.
No, well, we can pick a better day for that. All right, so then we'll just put this off until the
And-
next meeting, hopefully.
The purpose of having the top crown paved is so that it doesn't get worn down. So if they decide to keep it earthen, every time they plow, a little of that's going to be taken down. What precautions are to keep that up? Because that keeps the water that's running down Wilder Road
Well, I think it's
from
part of their
turning in.
maintenance. I think it's part of what they're gonna have to do for maintenance, which they're gonna have to crown it every time after the winter every year too. That was part of their overall maintenance that they were gonna do on
But
it.
I believe the reason that it was probably asked to be paved.
No, we didn't ask. They wanted to, they thought that they proposed it to be
Oh, they
paved.
proposed it,
Yeah.
okay. I thought that was in our order.
No, well, it may have been, I'd have to look at the order again, but they were the ones who proposed to pave it, and then when they didn't, and it was functioning well, I think they decided not to.
But it's only going to function well for a period of time.
Yeah, they'll have to continue, that driveway was
But that
just
means
gonna
we
need
have to
continue.
police it.
Well, to some degree, I mean, we own the land down below.
Marie, you were
so-
out there for the walk the first time, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I've been there twice now, and I actually asked them if they were gonna pave it. The
Yeah.
second time we were out there, and they looked at me like I was crazy, because the cost was just gonna be way too
No,
much.
just the crown, just
Yeah.
not the whole driveway.
Just around the
So-
bridge.
No,
No,
not,
just
it's
at
up
the
at the
top
top,
at
on
Wilder
Wilder
Road.
Road.
Yeah, where the
So what
frost-
happens is
Yeah.
Wilder Road's downhill, and that water runs downhill and starts to sheet. And if that driveway is lower than the hill, the water will then take a turn to the right. And that was what was happening for, was turning to the right. So not only did they get all the water from the driveway, but they got all the water from the top of Wilder to their driveway. And that was what was causing the problem. So if you put a little crown there, the water, unless it gets very high, just runs right past that and doesn't go down there. It doesn't add to the problem.
Yeah.
And so I have it on my driveway. I put a crown on just for that reason, because I'm on a hill like that. and it keeps the water from coming down my driveway. And
I just have it in the notes from May of 2011 that
Yeah.
Mr. Wagner said they want to keep the berm at the top of their driveway gravel. So again, we're going back, but that's what they proposed to the commission in 2011.
Is that when we gave the order?
No, that was after we'd given the order. Because again, the order was based on the plan that they had submitted, which showed it paved. But I think at the time, nobody objected to it, so that's my point. Is that in 2011, they told us they were gonna keep it gravel, and we didn't object to that.
I don't remember that discussion, to be honest with you. I remember being there twice, because the first time was, we went there and we did Tui at the same time.
Yes.
That's why, because we went to Tui a couple times, we went down that street a couple times. And then we went back again this year.
Right, and the hay bales and the silt fence were a mess. I mean, everything was a mess. Did they clean that up?
Well, Bob, all I can say is that you were at the meeting.
I don't remember them saying they weren't gonna pave that.
Yeah, Mr. Wagner said they want to keep the berm at the top of the driveway as gravel.
That's what
Okay.
she's gonna walk.
Yeah, he needs to look at it.
I guess I thought the maid had been talking, I was probably not paying attention.
Who knows? 2011.
That's right.
Okay, so we're gonna look at that and we'll keep that one on. So do you wanna do the next?
So we have, last thing we have is land management. In the Neshoba Forest Plot Project, discuss participation in the Neshoba Forest Project.
I don't know if you wanted the agenda just a second. So, last fall, I was contacted by a teacher at Neshoba who has started doing a project in the Lancaster Town Forest, and he's actually the chairman of the Lancaster Town Forest Committee, and he was also the vice president of a forest management company in the Adirondacks. And there were some reports in some local papers. I don't remember if the Common actually ran
Yes,
it or not.
they
Did they?
did, yeah.
So what he started to do is to have some permanent inventory plots set up in the Lancaster Town Forest so that the high school environmental science students can go out and measure the trees in the plots and learn about tree composition, the growth of the town forest. And in their case, they are also thinking at some point there'll be some logging work or some forestry work done in the Lancaster Town Forest. And so they'll have some of these permanent plots set up, and then they'll have some plots where they do the logging, and they'll be able to sort of do some
Where in
comparison.
Lancaster, as far as that's what I'm looking up?
It is
See if I can find it
on Brockelman Road. So it's off of 117 before you get to 190.
Right downhill from, there's a truck place on
I can't remember what was on the corner, but it was kind of a long road.
It's
And then
almost
some
down-
kind of farm or something.
So it's
Yeah,
almost,
there was a-
it's almost to Leominster?
Yeah,
Yes.
yep. And there was, part of the forest was on two sides of the road. So there were hiking trails and parking area on one side, and then we went in on the other side. So they have about 1/5 of an acre of plots with trees over 5 inches in DBH marked and measured. And the trees can either be tagged with metal tags or painted with numbers, which is what they did in the Lancaster Town Forest. And each plot was put 330 feet apart. And so that they wouldn't be visible from the road or a trail, and they weren't in the middle of wetlands. And anyway, his overall goal is for the students to track long-term patterns of forestry inventory and growth in each of the towns. And so he's interested in trying to see if there's a place in both Stowe and Bolton where they can set up similar plots. And so Janet and I went out for him to show us what they had done. And now he's wondering if there's some interest from the Bolton Conservation Commission as to where it might be acceptable to do this, or what ideas we have. He would certainly start to lay out, given any direction from the commission, whether you'd even agree to it. I didn't print out a picture tonight, but basically the trees had, in Lancaster Town Forest, you know, it was a large tree. It had a line at, I don't know, is it chest height, is that where they put it? Yeah. And then they had the, it painted with red, you know, had the plot number, or the tree numbers on it. So.
We don't have a town forest.
No, we
It doesn't
don't,
have
but
to
we
be a
have
town
forest
forest.
land. You know, so, and so the idea for them is just to have students to be able to do it in you know, throughout the district. So, you know, they're looking at as far east in Stowe as they can go, to try to see, you know, a dissimilar forest possibly from what's in Lancaster, and then what there might be in Bolton. Maybe we look at higher elevation, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that was one of the things we thought maybe Von Hill would be the appropriate place, you know, because there might be a difference in the kind of forest trees, composition, growth, you know. When we did, Janet led, we led the tracking, or our walk, our Thursday morning walk out at Von Hill, and, you know, we were looking at the forest, and it looks as though, you know, it has been forested at some point within, what did you say, the last 50 years anyway, or sooner.
There had been some cutting.
Yeah, there had definitely been some cutting. So, anyway, that was one thought. You know, the metal tags are obviously smaller and less visual, maybe, you know, to anybody who is wandering through off the trail or whatever, but, you know, I don't know whether you'd have any objections to painting them or having plots set up, or.
What size plots, like acre plots, or?
These were 1/5 of an acre.
No, 1/5 of an acre.
And I can't remember how many they had, if he said. They said they were 330 feet apart. Let's see where he says how many they had.
I don't remember that either. He had several at he wanted several at each site, is that it?
Do they harvest wood in
No,
the
this
forest,
is,
town
well,
forest?
at that town forest, in
Lancaster.
Lancaster, they may.
They may.
right?
Because there was someone that
But.
came to talk to us
Yeah.
about some land in Bolton. It wasn't conservation land. But there was a forestry plan they submitted to us, and talked to us about
Oh, this was
a few
talking
years
about
ago.
Bower Springs?
No, it wasn't Bower Springs. Remember someone came in about doing some forestry at some place in Bolton? About
Well,
2 or 3
when
years ago?
somebody does a forest cutting plan, sometimes we get the copies of the forest cutting
That's
plan.
what it was, forest cutting.
And we may have invited the consultant, the consultant, if there was time, you know, we may have invited the consultant to come in. I don't remember distinctly which.
Someone had
we're talking
submitted a
about.
plan for some land in
For doing forest cutting, though.
cutting.
Yeah, that would have
And I
probably
think
been why.
I think it was near conservation or within resource area.
Mhm.
And I remember that they brought the plan, you remember this? And we discussed it, and the questions was, you know, who approves it and so on and so forth, because it's a Mass Department about forestry.
Right.
They need approval.
So normally, if somebody submits a forest cutting plan, it doesn't have to go through the notice of intent process of the public, under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Yeah.
But they send it to us so that if we have questions or we have comments, we can provide it to the state forester. And the state forester evaluates whether or not there's concern or
That was
issue.
the discussion that we had.
Yeah, yeah, so we may have had that discussion.
So I don't know if there's land that somebody who has land that they're gonna forest
private
anyway,
land?
that might be interested, this might be a help to them and then a help to the students.
Well, I think I'd rather it be, well, I'd rather it be public land, you know, where the town's benefiting from the information that the students are gathering as well,
And
because
this-
we may want to do something on our land at some point too.
Like
you
what?
know.
People are
Like
just-
forested,
We
harvesting?
might want to harvest something.
Do we have land that's commercially viable to harvest?
Well, how do
And
you
we
know if you don't study it?
No, I don't think it's a question of studying. I think there's certain types of
Well,
trees.
might that help
that
you
are
too?
commercial.
You might see the land that they're harvesting
It's
appears
not-
healthier over time, or is holding up
The
better.
issue isn't the type of tree, where, you know, we have a lot of oak in Bolton. The issue, I think, is that, is there anywhere where we could do a large enough cutting to make it financially worthwhile?
Yeah.
Okay, and I was trying to ask Tim Kastner, that's that teacher, about that, and he's from a foresting family, and he really couldn't answer that because the market changes on the, you know, the price of the wood, and so I don't know the answer to that, but I think you know, I think it's a great idea to get the kids outdoors in general, learning about trees and learning about the environment and how forests change. And I think it's a great idea to let them use our conservation lands, because then they're invested in, you know, having protected land. So I certainly have no problem. I think it's a wonderful idea to let them go do their studies wherever. I mean, we're not talking about permitting them to cut any
Right,
trees.
it's just
It's
studying.
just letting them learn about the trees and putting little markers on the trees. I don't feel like I don't have a problem with that.
I assume this is free to the town, right?
Yeah.
These are just students.
We already
that-
pay because they're in the district.
Nothing's
Right,
free
yeah,
to
we
the
pay
town.
the taxes.
I mean, they're
Right.
not-
Yeah,
they're not
there's
asking
no
for it.
additional
Okay.
costs that they've associated
And
with
is
it.
there any way that we can see pictures of these markers that they were?
Yeah, I
putting out?
may.
Because I would be concerned about how they're marking the trees.
Well, I don't think I have pictures of the metal tags because they didn't do it that way there. I'm just trying to remember if I have it on this computer, if I may have it on the iPad. But I can forward them,
That'd be great.
yeah.
And we're talking about a fifth of an acre, or multiple fifths of an acre?
Yeah, multiple probably. I mean, you can direct him as to what you think would be acceptable, but again, I don't see it in my notes
He
from
also-
what he'd sent to us, as how many they had done on that in the
Yeah, I don't
Lancaster.
remember that either, but I think he said that if anybody was concerned about the cosmetic effect, you know, how it would look to people on the trails, that you could have them put the markers on the opposite side of the tree so you couldn't see it from the trails.
Right.
You know, I was walking northwards.
Were they studying the growth, how much it grows?
Yeah, how much it grows, and how the forest composition changes.
The Northwoods Trail, Carol,
Mhm.
somebody's been spray painting trees. It looks terrible. Really, really bad.
Well,
I
we
took
could-
pictures, I should send them.
Yeah, do. We had a call from somebody off of Warner Road. Maybe, do you remember hearing about this?
I do, because Betsy and I
Yeah,
were
because there was a
checking.
piece of land that the trust owns.
The trust owns it, and there were
And there was
painted
complaint
marks.
about painting there, but I didn't know that it went any further than that parcel.
Well, it eventually connects to, it might be Northwood.
Into the Northwoods Trail.
Are they just
And
putting
if you
graffiti
follow
on the
those
trees,
markers,
or-
well, Betsy took you on the
They're
she's on the
marking,
trust
they're
board.
marking the trees on
And
the
we
trail.
followed those markers,
They're making
and
a
they ended
new
up at the Northwoods,
trail
I think it was the
markers.
Northwoods development.
Because there's some tributaries
Yeah.
that are not the official trail.
Yeah.
There are some side tributaries, they flagged them, they've spray painted them.
Yeah.
But then they've spray painted, you know, from the vernal pool and
Mhm.
the edge of Northwoods
Mm.
in, it's awful. I mean, they've got practically orange all over the trees.
You mean like
On
a
both
large
sides.
area? A
Yes,
large
on
area of
the
trees?
I actually
trunks.
have photographs.
And I
of
think
it.
my guess is it's hunters that are coming in and out of there, that are trying to find their way around. And it was
Oh.
unnecessary what they did. It was very easy to see where the trail is.
They're not supposed to be hunting in there anyway.
No, that's not true. Well, some of it is private.
Okay.
Even though we have an easement, it's still private land.
Oh, I see.
So, it looks terrible. I mean, really bad.
Well,
And
that
so my
segues,
concern
that
is about the
segues a little bit
markings.
into the other trail linkage discussion
Yeah.
a little bit when we get to that one too. But yeah, send me your pictures, and it sounds like the trust has taken a look at
The
some of
trust-
the marking as
My
well.
wife is on the board of the trust, and we went down there and looked at that Warner one, and you're exactly right.
Well,
Those
it's
things
still
are everywhere.
Northwoods.
We guessed that it might have been the school that had put them up, or somebody had put them up for cross-country running purposes. We had no idea. about
Maybe,
it.
it's new, because I do that trail quite a bit, and I've
Like new, what would you say though, new?
Well, maybe a month or two.
Oh, that would be,
It's-
I
well,
would imagine
yeah,
cross
cross-country
country
is in
keep
the
doing that
fall.
without getting.
Well, they were running that day. There was a run going on that day when we were down there. So it was,
Yeah, that
it
might
was
be
more
good.
than, it was
I
more than a
went
month ago.
On Christmas. Christmas Day, it was there.
Well, it's easy enough to ask the school if we think, to check in with them, but,
It was unnecessary. Whatever they're doing is
I
wrong.
agree, it wasn't
They need to
necessary.
stop. Whoever's doing it needs to be told, needs to be
well,
stopped.
how do we find that out?
Well,
We're gonna get those little cameras you
Yeah,
put on the
exactly.
trees that look like
Yeah.
fire.
I mean, some of that's open space.
Because they might spray the camera.
Yeah, I know, I don't know how you find that out without
We had
maybe
one of
checking with the
those.
neighbors
All you see is
or
me cutting the lawn.
checking with the school or.
Yeah, well,
Because I think it was a neighbor who called.
It was
The
a
neighbor
neighbor.
of the parcel
was.
out on Warner
It
Road,
was, yeah.
who called us, not knowing, who to check with. And then I passed it over to Dan or the trust, and
And then
then,
he found his way back to me.
well,
Yeah.
it reminded me of Rattlesnake Hill, where
Yeah.
you said there was a lot of spray painting there.
yeah, we'd had
And
trouble with somebody there one time.
We posted stop doing that.
Yeah.
What
And
was
maybe we
their
need to do that
purpose?
there.
What was the purpose? Why were they doing this at Rattlesnake Hill? Was it vandalism?
They were
or was
making
there
new
something-
biking trails.
No, it
Biking
wasn't the
trails.
bike. I don't think it was the bike. It was somebody who felt as though they were getting lost, and so they were making their own markings, and
Oh,
they were
really?
making their
They
own
needed
trail,
to-
and, yeah.
Just for your interest, those marks on Warner Land look very like the painted marks I found on the Gould land.
Oh, the red ones?
The red ones, yeah.
So
Or some of
hopefully,
them.
you know, whatever the students are doing, it's not gonna be that bad as, you know, spray painting these trees.
Well,
No, he showed us little markers.
Right.
well, the spray painting's significant. I mean, it was like, you know, you have a number, the line, and then a number, if I'm remembering it. It didn't, I mean, to me, it looks like forest work. It didn't look like vandalism, it looked like a study thing. I mean, I think, you know, again, you know, as Janice said, part of it's education. I mean, unfortunately, you don't have a newspaper right now to educate easily, you know, just in the Bolton paper, but you can use the other papers and try to get some information out there if we agree to do it. I think, you know, we could, if you want to pursue it, and I've only heard, you know, I guess from Janet, right? Nobody else has objected one way yet. But if we're going to pursue it, you know, we can ask him to you know, lay out what he thinks would be good ones and let us consider it still further. You know, I mean, it's not.
Right. I'd like to see some pictures of what they've
Yep.
done in Lancaster.
Yep.
Well, I agree with the things Janet said. It's great to get kids outside, no matter what they're doing outside.
Even if it's spray painting.
Well,
Not vandalism.
It's too bad we don't have subway cars. They love subway cars.
So,
Just do vandalism.
okay, so I'll send you pictures, and then you can let me know whether you'd like to talk about it again, or whether you want to, you know, give.
I think we
me-
should
okay.
talk about it again. I'm kind of leaning towards that, but again, it's new to me,
Yeah.
and I want to see what it looks like.
Okay.
If it's going to be a lot and it's going to affect how the trails look and the forest looks, I'm against it. But if it's in small areas and it's not that bad, I'm very
Yeah.
much for it.
And like he said, they can put it on the side of the tree that's away from the trail anyway, so, with the markers. So it doesn't need to be a visual, you know, blemish to hikers.
Yeah, maybe, I don't remember about the tags either, you know, whether they have those, that's easy enough, they're small. You know, if we can you can send me a picture of what they have for that. 'Cause-
Why do they spray paint them instead of just doing a tag?
Because it's easier to see.
Yeah, I'm sure it's, well, it's probably easier and maybe it's cheaper, you know, probably both. Because he lays out the plot, I can't remember, did he mark the trees himself initially?
I forget, but he did lay it all out. I mean,
So it may be that he was doing the marking as well, and so it was, because I thought that there was like a point that he started with, right?
Maybe he marks and they go measure. Is that
Yeah,
what it is? He
yeah, I
marks
think
and they
he
go measure.
marked them out, so maybe it was faster and easier for him as a, you know, one-person operation to do it that way, that's how we had done it. I can ask him that question again. We did this in, I think at the end of beginning of November, so I don't remember.
I had climbed with land in Maine that was forested, that was their business, and it was tens of thousands of acres. But when they went in, they replanted, as soon as they cut down, it was commercially very successful, it was very valuable land. This here, when they do forest, this kind of stuff, they cut it, they don't usually replant.
Well, you know, I
Not
mean,
the same.
But
you know.
it depends. When you
Right.
replant, it doesn't necessarily grow back the same. It grows, what you plant grows back. You know, if
Right,
you
but
plant pine, you're gonna get.
But I found around this area that people don't go back because it's not, there's a difference in what they can make on the land here compared to, you know, a big forest or something.
Well, yeah, it's the area. It's
So they
too
can't
small.
afford to plant, so they cut down and they just leave it.
Which is fine, I mean.
Well, I think, again, if we're talking about it on conservation land, it's a whole different story than just studying it at this point. But, you know, there may be places that, you know, I remember when I first came, people on the commission had wanted to look at clearing the top of Barrett's Hill over near Danforth, because they wanted to have some view, you know, and the same over on North Peak, I think at Von Hill, there used to be a view, or, you know, there's been places that there have been views and vistas, you know, that have changed and you've lost. So that, is it a reason to cut it? It may be. Again, it depends on what people's sensibilities are at the time. when Janet and I were doing the walk, I mean, we're talking about habitat, you know, so in some cases, there's reason that you would maybe do forest cutting or opening a field to create certain kinds of habitat. So none of us are really talking about that at this point, but anything we would be doing in this town is small scale, because it's not, you know,
Right.
the tens of thousands of acres. But just even having those discussions, I think, is stuff that we should be doing, is having, you know, is how we're managing the land. Should we be doing anything differently, or trying, you know, something for habitat, or, you know, is it all just meant to be for recreational, you know, viewing? And it's fine if that's what we want to do, but, you know, it's worth having those discussions. Okay.
Let's finish up, because it's 10 o'clock.
Okay, well, we've got a few things.
You want to do Five Shire?
Yeah.
Can I just comment on the name of the committee? That
The
town
name, the
committee.
dam, that's exactly what it is, right. So, on Five Shire,
I didn't think of it that way, that's good.
that's how it is.
Dam Conservation Committee.
First, I had sent you, well, as you know, the engineer that we'd met with, who came in to sort of describe the project to us, Scott Charpentier, he's not with the firm anymore. He's not with Leonard Engineering.
Yeah.
And then Karen Fung, who had also come to some of our meetings, she's also not there any longer. So we have a new engineer that I'm working with, Dave Baptista, how do you say it?
Baptista?
And yes, and so he's a principal at the company, and he when he took over, he had to kind of immerse himself in the project so he would understand it better. And he had some modifications he wanted to make to the plans. I think a lot of it was just clarification kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I did ask him to send a red line just so that we would be consistent, as we had talked about, you know, if people are making changes to plans, that we determine whether or not it's significant or not. So that was the first order of business, is to see whether anybody felt like any of the changes were significant that he had put on there, except the red line drawings.
Did it cost the town more money because there's a new employee now that has to come up to speed on this? And
I
therefore,
don't think that they charged anything differently, but I can.
Because it's all
double check that.
contractual, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all within the contract, but I don't think it did, but I'll double check.
Have they begun the permitting process?
Well, we have, the order of conditions has been issued by us,
Yeah.
and they've got the approval from the state. So my next part was, part of the next thing was also to give you just a brief update. So today, we did the pre-bid conference. So we
Okay.
put this out to bid, and we had at least, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11. Looks like, I think 10, because it looks like a couple people from the same company signed.
Who wanted to put a bid in?
That came to the pre-bid. So you don't get, the pre-bid was not mandatory, so there could be others who, are looking on their own, or.
And some of these people may not put in a bid
and
after the
some of
bid.
these, after having walked it in the freezing cold this morning with the wind chill, it was bitter. They may say, like, I don't want to ever work outside again, but, anyway, we had that walk. The only, thing that we talked about that's different on the plan, that Dave and I had actually talked about after the plans had been done, is that the staging area for some of the stockpiling and some of the turnaround, there's an area that's a little more open than what they showed on the plan, and we mentioned it to the contractors today that we'd like to, we're looking to minimize the number of trees that have to be removed and disturbed areas, and that, so we showed them the location that we'd like to do the turning around and the stockpiling that was different from the plan. And we kind of call that a field change.
Okay.
It will be written up in the minutes of today's meeting, which I got this afternoon and haven't really fully read yet. And then on the 21st of January, we open the bids. So we have a bid opening, the engineer will come to town hall, everything's submitted that day to the town secretary's office at town hall, and at 2 o'clock, we open them. We basically are picking the low bidder that meets the criteria that is, that they have reputable, that they are, they do the work on time, that they, meet certain standards of operation, I guess. But the main thing is the low bid, because that's how it's picked. And then we left it that if they, that the town is interested in getting the work done sooner than later, and that if they feel they can do the work and not draw the water down, which is sort of the time constraint issue that we have from the Heritage Program, then the work could proceed, this winter. And if they don't feel that they can do that, and they put it in for this, for after May 15th, then we have to consider, 2 different types of plans, I guess, that are submitted. So our preference was to be given to, trying to do the work now, if that was possible.
Be nice to get it done
Yeah, it would be.
before the dam collapses.
And so then the final thing is that the way the engineering firm has put together all the contract documents and all of the, like, it's, I didn't bring it, but it's a, good sized manual, project manual. It's got, most of the work goes through the engineer. So the contractor submits things to the engineer. The contractor submits the bills to the engineer. The contractor submits any change orders to the engineer, et cetera. And since we haven't really done that kind of a project before, I talked to the town administrator, and he recommended that we have a small committee of in-house staff people function as the, on behalf of the town to agree to anything that the change, if there's a change order that the committee has to agree to it, or when the bill is going to be paid, the committee agrees to it. So my recommendation after having that discussion was to have that be myself and our town planner, who's an engineer by training, and the DPW superintendent. And that way, we have not just me having to make a decision, and it falling just to one person, but to a couple people who have some experience, greater than I do in some of the
Do we
areas.
need to vote on this? Or is it
I
just-
think it would be appropriate to, and if somebody from the commission wants to be on it, I have no objection to that at all. It was just suggested that it be in-house staff just to make it happen,
Does anybody want to be on it? Can I make a motion, we establish a dam committee? Carol, the town engineer, and who's from DPW?
The superintendent.
Superintendent, is that Harold Brown?
It is now, and.
All right, and Harold Brown.
Well, let's say the DPW superintendent.
Town planner, the commission agent, the town planner, and the DPW superintendent. All in favor?
Okay. So the only other part that I just wanted to mention is that, so town council has provided me today with a draft temporary access agreement for the Odells. They're the owners at 14 Collins Road. And I sent it to the engineer because they need a little description of the access, the temporary access easement area. And then she's also finalizing a draft of the temporary access easement over the common driveway. And that would get signed by, I think it's 4 or 5
Did the
property
Odell
owners.
sign this yet or no?
Well, I just got the temporary draft. I just
So
got
they
a
haven't
draft.
seen it?
No, they haven't. I sent the Odells and the other owners of the common driveway a letter.
Because you sent us a copy.
Did I send it? Okay, so back in December.
You just
know-
sent us one of the easement.
Oh, okay, then I just sent you okay, I didn't remember that I even sent you that. But in December, I sent a letter to the Odells and to the common driveway owners to let them know about the pre-bid date and the bid opening date, and that we were moving forward, and that we would be having these access agreements, being drafted, so that they would be aware that it's coming down the pike. And I heard from nobody. So I'm assuming that's all good.
Yep.
Today, several of us tromped up to the Odells, and nobody came out and said, anything, and others have been checking out the driveway and the access, so.
Jeffrey and Melissa.
Yes,
Yeah, you sent us that.
okay. The temporary access easement?
Yes.
Okay.
Temporary access
All right.
and construction.
Yeah, so if you have any comments on it, I didn't really have any comments other than,
Well, this
getting
portion
the
when the
engineer
dam
to
committee
check some
will
stuff.
have their meetings in Las Vegas with them.
oh, yeah, we'll have a nice budget.
Yeah, you sent us that. So why don't we do bills, and then we can do minutes and go home.
Okay, well, can we also really just do a couple things on trail, because in part, Gordon's here, interested in the trail stuff.
We all
and-
want to go home, so.
And then I'll try to make it somewhat quick.
Okay.
Okay, I don't have any bills, so that'll be quick.
All right, instead of bills.
Okay.
we'll do bills.
All right, and then just the minutes, if you want to vote on the minutes, unless you have changes or want to make any modifications. There's the minutes from last meeting in December and then
Did everybody read
last
it?
March.
Are you ready to vote on any changes? To make a motion, we accept, we have to do each one individually, we can do them together. I make a motion, we approve the minutes from the 12/3/13 meeting and the 3/26/13 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous again.
Done.
Okay. So Gordon had offered to try to help do some trail maintenance, I think initially, maybe he had
Yeah.
offered it.
I was walking past your office and I thought, I'd be interested in doing some trail maintenance, so I walked in and said it.
Yeah. So I said, oh, good. Because we always need some volunteers to do stuff with the trails and with the commission. So we set up a meeting, and he and Winslow Green came in, and I talked to them about a couple of areas that I felt needed some attention. One was in the area of the Oaks open space, and another area was over near Wilder Pond. And I forget how we got onto the Gould piece, but we also got into that property.
I can't remember. I think you asked me originally where I lived, and I pointed out that I was fairly close to the Oaks on the Gold piece. And that's
Okay,
probably
that
where it
maybe
came from.
started. So Gordon went out and they, just using their bike trail GPS on their phones or whatever, they, let's see, let me get my bearings. Okay, so this is Sawyer cutting across here, so this is Wattaquatic.
Yep.
And then, what's this, Ballville then? Or Ballville?
That's probably
Ballville.
We
This
walked
is a
out to
small.
our house, which is there actually, and we walked over there.
So anyway, they did this map and they kind of came up with an area that was a natural trail, I guess, that either is being used by wildlife or people or both.
I
don't
think
know.
both. I think
Okay.
it's there, people just use it. Whether they're supposed to do it or not, it's a different question.
Yeah.
Everybody uses it.
And so this is the Oaks subdivision, and the orange areas in the back are the open space areas. What I don't have highlighted is that there's a trail easement that comes along the back of these house lots. And a lot of storm damage had occurred over the years. It didn't really get maintained. The trust actually holds the trail easement here, and then the town holds the open space parcel. So I was interested, if we weren't going to get this opened, is there some other way to kind of get in and use this space? And what Gordon ended up looking at is that, there is certainly a trail in through here, and this trail he thinks could be opened again. But he also walked along the back of the field, I guess,
Yeah,
and thought that's
it's-
quite lovely, but we don't have an easement there yet, or at this point.
Some of this is impassable. It's grown over and it's full of all sorts of stuff. So you effectively have to go into that field to get past.
Unless it gets cleared. So then I kind of took his squiggle and superimposed it on here to show you that this area is all owned by one person now, and then this area is owned by the International. And so I guess I just wanted to make sure that it would be fine with you guys if I sent out just a friendly letter saying, that we're interested in trying to connect, different properties and extend the trail systems, and, would you be at all interested in discussing this with us?
It's fine.
I think that's
Okay.
great, yeah.
So that's one property that I wanted to do that on. We had the conversation, whenever that was, back in November or December, about the difference between on Vaughan Hill when you're on the public land and then going on to conservation trail easements and so forth. Maria and I have had some conversation again about the Northwoods Corn Road section, and there's an area in there that I'm confused as far as where the trail actually goes, but it's mostly private land, and so there's, again, an interest in maybe trying to pursue with those homeowners or landowners, whether they might be now interested in formalizing something, since the loop trail kind of goes through there, and there's been informal passage there for quite some time, so that's another spot. What I don't have on this map that I'd sent, did I send that to everybody, the map that showed the confusing spot, or just to Maria, the one out between Corn Road and Northwoods? I didn't send it to you? Well, this is Northwoods, and the trust owns this piece, and the town owns these other pieces. And then the town owns this is Houghton Farm. And so Ben Sikansky just put the loop trail in here, which comes up from about this spot. You come in, and then it comes in and loops, and then you come back out. Maria had wanted to go and check it out from where she lives over here.
Yeah, from Pine Road.
Right, and he had not extended it on Pinewood because there's a really steep drop, a big rock face, and he wasn't really sure where the property boundaries were and how to kind of get it across there. So I've spoken with somebody on Pinewood who does a lot of walking in the area, and I'm trying to work with him to see if we can't get this figured out a little bit more as well. But there's a trail easement that comes across that another Eagle Scout had done that's not shown on here, but it comes across this way and links up into this sort of network of trails.
So the lot on the corner of Pinewood and Laurel,
Yeah.
that's town-owned property, isn't it?
There's a section that is.
Right. So is that what we're trying to look to?
Yeah.
Because that might work.
Yeah, so there's a guy down here who I communicated with like right after Christmas who walks his dog like all the time, and I told him about this trail, and I told him that we are looking to extend it into here. So I have to then we had this between snow days and other New Year's and so forth. I haven't been back to him since then, but
at the end of Laurel, the cul-de-sac where the Beausoleils, the Eagle Scout made that new trail.
Yeah.
There are, at the top of that hill behind Beausoleil, there are trails going in the direction of Houghton Farm. And is that?
well, we don't own any. But that's all private in through there. So
I wonder if it somehow connects into Houghton Farm.
Doesn't the trust own some land around here?
Yeah, they own this and they own this. This is where we were talking about where there was some markers that somebody spray painting. We'd had a call off from Warner
Because
here.
a couple years ago, there was a trust walk through this land, I think, wasn't there? They have a walk every year with their annual meeting.
I don't remember that.
And is there a big farm here with some horses over here, or over here someplace?
That's on the Harvard side.
No, it's not on the Harvard side.
Well, there is a big farm with horses over here
Maybe
on
that's it.
Firefly Farm.
Yeah.
That's over this way. But you might have done the loop trail, is what you might have done.
Yeah.
And that includes some of the Levinson was the property, and then we got this from when the subdivision was put in.
Well, it would be great to create that linkage.
But anyway, so that's some other linkage that I want to send some letters out on. We had a conversation with at least one of the property owners up in here before, and at that time, they didn't want to do anything formal.
Okay.
So there's that, and then Gordon did this great packet of some things in the, this is West Berlin Road, this is Brandel Road, and this is Sawyer Road.
Mhm.
And then I'm gonna go just flip through some things. This is the map from the trail guide that the trust has. It's a little outdated, but it shows you on West Berlin Road, you can come in on a trail easement, and then you can, off the trail easement, cut across the town parcel, or you can cut across land that's conservation. And then you go back in the trail easement, and you follow it around back out to Randall Road. That's what's shown. It also shows a trail easement, the trail coming through the land, conservation land here. What Gordon did was he did walk the trail easement in off of West Berlin Road and found, there's some unmarked trail area in here, so it needs some trail marking. The trail that cut across the land kind of goes in this direction, not necessarily as it was shown up exactly on here, but it cuts across the town of Bolton land and then rejoins the trail easement, but it's what did this mean, unmapped trails here?
It wasn't
There's a
marked.
lot. It's not marked at all?
It's not really marked, no, you really got to invent it yourself. You can see where it goes, but there's no formal
idea.
triangles and
Yeah.
all the rest of
So
it.
so he's, I'm gonna set him up with some triangles and stuff like that, but part of the point is that then you come over to this section, and where people are walking is not in the trail easement, but on somebody else's land. And then you get back on the trail easement, and then people come off of it, but it's town land, because is this where it's marshy?
Yeah, this is where it's marshy, and there's a little hole in the wall here, and then there's a bridge over a makeshift bridge down here over a brook, which really doesn't look very safe. And then you end up on this side of the wall, but the easement on this thing shows at the other side of the wall.
So this, and again, I'm thinking, I'm going to go out with Gordon on Friday. If anybody is interested in joining us at 9:30, we're going to walk. But I'd like to look at this area here and see whether, we want to try to get it marked within the trail easement, or we need to talk to this owner. And then just over in here, well, there's another thing over in here, but whether or not it's fine, where it's here, what we need to do, if we need to do the boardwalk or bridge. And then the other confusing thing, which maybe you can just tell me, I think it's off on this map, you can see it better, right? Coming in off of Sawyer?
Yes, if you come down here, this suggests that you can come down off Sawyer Road, in fact. But there's no easement marked on here.
There's no easement, there's no easement shown on that, and there's one spot where it's
And
blocked, right?
there it's blocked, and then it's not blocked a few feet further down, so...
So there's a little bit of work that we still have to sort of figure out, but I just want to show you some of the trail stuff.
Could I just
Yep.
interrupt slightly, because we were talking about this earlier.
Oh yeah, the pictures, the
wherever it's gone. There's one. There's
yeah.
these strange little things on the tree.
keep them in order because I don't want to
Gordon.
lose my track.
You should do our slides for town
I know
meeting.
these
Here.
are beautiful.
But so here they've marked it every which way.
There are all sorts of marks. There are painted ones, which are very like the ones on Warner Land, correct?
Yeah, except many of those on one tree. I mean,
Oh.
maybe
Oh,
like 4 or 5.
yeah.
Could be
And
paintballs.
There
Yeah.
weren't many when we went.
I know.
out.
What about
There were
paintball? Yeah.
just 3 or 4.
I thought I was expecting it was like stripy.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
What about people who, the kids who go out
No,
and
well, it was
shoot
a block.
paintballs?
Well, no, because it was only the trees that were lining the trail on either
Oh,
side.
okay.
So it's like somebody was trying to make a breadcrumbs to come in and out,
Okay.
which is ridiculous because the trail's so wide.
Mm.
It's obvious where the trail
It
is.
was. It is obvious.
But there were many dots, many big, full.
Odd, actually.
On both
On one
sides.
tree, there would
It
be...
could be
Yeah,
pink
there would
guns.
be like 4 or 5 on one tree. I don't know.
It could be paint guns.
Yeah, I wonder.
Firing at a tree.
They just fire.
It's
Wait,
unacceptable. We
that
need.
big?
I know, but
Stop
I'm-
the
But that
behavior.
is exactly what it is.
You gotta catch them. You gotta catch them
That's
first.
probably what
How
it
big are
is,
these
'cause I can't
now?
imagine why anybody...
Oh, I don't
No,
know.
Well, in
that's
this
not paint
case,
gun,
they're
that's
doing it every which way but loose. These are push pins. And
I
then-
thought it was Annapolis. Annapolis.
Oh, bless us.
What's an apple?
It's computer programming, 3 dots.
Oh. No. But anyway, so that's something we're working on, is trying to get, some of the trails that, could be better marked. Some
Well,
trails that,
it'll be in the high 30s.
okay, so that's why I picked
good.
that day.
Yeah.
So, well, I won't be going to Wilder Road because I'll be out checking around here. But,
That's all right.
and then one last thing, this isn't really trail, but this came in today, and so
And
I just
also,
wanted to show
My
you.
uncle tries maintaining those too.
When we amended
did.
the conservation restriction for the Century Mill Estates, you're supposed to send in a data form to the state that shows what you amended so that they can keep track of it in GIS. And I didn't have the form. I didn't think I had the form anyway that I needed to use to send in, so I emailed somebody at MassGIS and asked them if they could send it to me. Anyway, today he sent me an email that says, I think I may have just discovered an area of encroachment on state-funded land. It appears to be private landowner has cleared about 1/3 of an acre of the southwest portion of this conserved land off Fawn Hill. I feel pretty confident about the incursion having geo-referenced a survey of the adjacent property. And he was asking, does Bolton have an encroachment policy? So this is Vaughan Hill, this is conservation land, and what it looks like is that there's, an area of here that is, being maintained as probably lawn or something.
Yeah.
So I showed this to Janet earlier today, and well, we looked at two things. One was, this is the town map of our parcel overlays, which are not always exact, so I can't say
So it's
that's
this
exact.
land right here
But
that's
it's, we're thinking that maybe this area.
Yeah.
Janet looked at it on Google Earth, and with the way that, the way the picture wasn't here, you can't necessarily say
Exactly,
that,
but it looks like it's-
are you saying shaded, or you're saying.
And you don't know how old the
Right,
pictures are
right.
either.
Oh, wait, you're leaving out,
Okay.
remember he had sent, whoever this is,
He has
sent
the overlay
another
one.
I think it was
photo
better, by the way.
and said that,
When
I don't
Um,
make a copy of that one.
I thought that the issue was that the house, was it 2000?
Everything else, but they get better maps.
Well, the property switched hands in 2005.
So the question was the encroachment done before 2005 when the new people bought it,
Right.
right?
Well, that was my question, it wasn't his
Okay.
question.
And he sent
And then he sent another
photo
picture that looked like
made
it was a lot
look
less.
like it was in 2005, not encroached on, but in 2000 it was already encroached on, maybe not as much. I think the one that he sent you that made it look like there was not an encroachment in 2005, it was because if you look at it closely, the
The
shadow,
angle.
the shadow of the trees was towards the house, so it made it look like the line of the forest was much closer to the house. You can
Yeah.
actually see it.
So I think we need to probably send a letter, but I was trying to get some survey information first, and so the only thing I've been able to dig up so far today was just, from the registry. I mean, it looks as though, the lot looks like it's shown on the assessor's maps, and the distances seem to measure correctly, from here to here was about 430 feet or something like that, whatever I came up with. But so I don't know, what you guys want me to do or how you want me to do it. But if it's never been surveyed, who's right, who's wrong, who's got the right information. So before I
Well, how
send
did
any
he get his
information.
line here? He said he was pretty confident of the boundaries?
Well, he said that he geo-referenced a survey of the adjacent property, so I don't know if that means he got a survey like I just did, and he, did the measurements as well, or if he got, I don't know what we have for this land, I guess is that, I haven't looked this one up yet.
That's,
you know
that's
Big
open
Brother?
space.
This is open space that we bought, the town bought it, and we got money from the state through self-help.
And we never went and marked. we
It
never went and
doesn't have
marked it.
boundary markers, no.
Right. Well, maybe it's a candidate to have it.
Right, but so, I don't know whether, and I don't know whether, in this kind of a case, whether we would need to get more survey rather than just the,
Is there a pool there?
because I don't know what
Yeah,
monumentation
looks
there is
like
for
that.
somebody
Right,
to use.
well,
Well, that means the pool's open to all the
lady with
hikers
the
when they come by
GPS.
for a refreshment. doesn't it?
Oh,
The
that's
lady
right on
with
the line,
GPS.
actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure she's doing it as much right now.
because she was very reasonable.
I know.
And it would be worth the money to.
Yeah,
mark
I know
that
she's
up.
not doing the field work aspect of it, so I'm not.
Can she give a name for someone?
Well, so I know, I'm trying to find, Stowe's trying to figure something out with her
What's
right
the
now, which is why I
setback
know she's
for-
not doing something.
To your property line. to
Well,
have
I
a
know, I was
structure.
I have to pull the building permits and see if I can find any other information on that too.
They may not have a building permit, they might just put it in.
Yeah,
It's not the only one we found like that.
right. So I've got to do a little bit more homework, but I think you should be, I wanted you to be aware of it.
It's a good
And
lesson. If you're gonna do something you're not supposed to, do it in your house with the blinds down now.
Well,
And the TV off, because they could be looking in.
I mean, I think.
It's
we
kinda
should-
scary in a
I
way.
think we should verify if there's an encroachment, and if there's an encroachment, we should correct it. We should have it corrected.
Right, but how we go about it, at this point, without further
Send
information, I'm
Maria
not
over there.
quite
She'll
sure
straighten
yet
them
how
out.
we want to say it, because I think it's quite possible this owner bought it with that encroachment there.
It sounds like
Right,
that,
you know.
yeah,
but
it
it's
looks like it was.
irrelevant. I mean, it needs to be corrected.
Yeah, so
Even if
who
they
should
didn't
get-
know, then they
should
need
somebody
to be
be
made
fined?
aware.
Right,
Well,
but
that's a
what
good-
correction? Are we going to have them mark it and do the boundaries? Or are we going to claim that that's their responsibility, or are we going to say?
Well, does he have any bylaw about this at all? I mean, is there any law in town about you can encroach
Encroaching.
on open space? I mean,
Well, wait,
Dan
wait,
Brook
wait,
Brook,
but
they were
the thing is,
encroaching, what did we do?
We don't know for sure that they're encroaching, I guess that's the point.
First
I think
thing.
if we want to claim that, we have to show that they're encroaching, which would mean we would have to.
Or do they have proof that they're not encroaching?
So Maria, I have a neighbor that I think's been encroaching on the wetland. I mentioned to Carol. And her question was, how long have they been doing this? It was before they bought there. It gets,
But it's, I think that's irrelevant.
Yeah, but
Well,
the
not
question-
necessarily, there's a
Everything-
statute of limitations for certain things. You know, I mean, you can't,
The town-
they
the town
can't.
owns the
No,
land.
I'm not arguing this case, I'm just saying there was
This
statute of
guy's on
limitations in
his land.
certain cases, which it could have
What-
been in
what
his.
is the what is, what's the?
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you in this case. However, if they are continuing to mow it, say they continue to mow, they mowed it in
Right.
July,
Right,
then that's a new violation, in my
We shut
opinion,
this off?
right?
right.
So, so we just don't know, we don't have enough information yet. Somebody just sent me this today. It looks
Right.
visually like there may be an encroachment, but, you know, we have to get some further information.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, and then we can decide how we're gonna approach it, but I don't have any, I don't know if it was done by this owner, and I don't disagree necessarily that they would have to stop, but whether they're gonna have to do anything, I don't know. They may just have to stop, you know, whatever encroachment they have.
Right, and maybe we should mark the boundaries so that, you know, in the future owners, new owners there won't be confused about where the
Right.
boundary line is.
Well, and then, you know, we really need to have a better boundary policy ourselves, you know?
So at Danforth Brook, we had an encroachment.
Yeah,
We had the lady doing GPS there. Is that how we found out that,
yes, that's
That
how we
that guy
found out
was-
that there was an
and
encroachment.
we made him move?
Yes,
I mean, some significant landscaping to get off the encroachment.
yeah.
So this is, I see this as a similar thing.
Well,
I mean,
similar
maybe
but
we-
different in one way. This is more significant because the state has an interest in this because they gave us money.
Okay.
That land was a gift, and it was open space, and there was some question as to whether we could even negotiate that, right? So, again, it didn't end up working out that way. But this one is a little bit different,
Right, it's
you know,
actually
as well.
sounds more
On the other
strategic than
hand,
the state.
you know, when you buy this land, you know, there should be some policy of walking the boundaries, you know, or having the
Yeah.
boundaries marked, or,
Right.
I mean, the town doesn't want to spend the money on that part of it typically, and sometimes, you know, there's a stone wall, and so it's easy enough to see
Yeah.
it, you know, and,
Yeah.
but, you know, the commission at the time, nobody, you know, brought up, oh, there's an encroachment. You know, I mean, and then, so if these people have been, there is law, if somebody's been using land for a certain number of years, you know, they can claim, I forget what the word is, but, that they have their,
Pre-existing use or
yeah,
something?
they can
Yeah,
claim
there's-
that they,
It's a
Well, then
lot
they
of,
should be
it's a
paying-
lot of years.
Then they should be
Yeah.
paying taxes.
It's not
on
that
the
many
extra
years.
land.
It's like 20 or 35
yeah,
years.
that's not that many years if they,
Then-
or
Yeah.
if this is 7 years old
Then,
now,
you know, I
right,
hope
for
that their land's being
2005.
reassessed and they're paying
Well,
taxes on it.
there was an earlier, there's a much earlier one on Google Earth that wasn't 20 years ago. It might have been, I think it was 1990.
Carol, can we adjourn the meeting?
1995 is almost
Okay.
Meeting's adjourned.